Randy Tooman of the Fayette County Sheriff's Office in Texas talks about that special bond between a handler and their dog. I don't want to say aggressive bond, but they're the dog that bonds, very strongly with the handler. Is that correct?
I think any good working dog. As much time you spend with them, they're gonna bond. Once you get that initial bond, it's hard to explain if you're not a canine handler. It's like having a human person that you've worked with for 5 years every day for 10 to 12 hours. They can read your mind. They can feel your emotion, and it's undescribable, man.
Welcome to Game of Crimes. Hello. It is that time again. We are coming up on episode 48. We are getting close to 50 episodes. We're coming up on a year too. We'll be doing a year in June. So guys, everybody, welcome. Episode 48, Game of Crimes. I am your ultimate host, the host with the most and the best here, Morgan Wright, here literally with my partner in crime.
The guy that has to put up with his crap, Steve Murphy, but call me Murph.
Yes, we are legends in our own mind, former law enforcement, former heroes of the universe.
That's right. Those Avengers, they ain't got nothing on us.
I got nothing on us. We got them. Hey, guys, well, thank you guys for coming back. We have had, let me tell you, just real quickly before we get into the housekeeping, Jerry Clark got a lot of great comments back on Jerry, and I will tell you, Part 2 of Jerry's episode that we did with him was the second most downloaded episode we've ever had. In terms of numbers, the highest one obviously was our kickoff episode with you and JP, episode 1. But this has been the most downloaded episode since last June 28th.
Wow. Good job, Jerry. I'm just shocked that I was not aware of that case until my friend Kevin told me about it at the beach. And then read the book and thought, I can't believe I've never heard of this case. And then Jerry was just what an excellent person to talk to, man. Just from the very first time I spoke to him on the phone, he was excited and it was a blast. That was a great interview. So thank you, Jerry.
I wasn't sure I believed him at the first because anytime an FBI agent says that they're FBI and humbled in the same sentence, I didn't know it was him or not, but he definitely was. He is such a good guy. And we actually got a lot of comments from people in Ohio who said, I know this area of Ohio. It's great to hear stories. Yeah. People want to hear more. So we will bring him back, but hopefully you guys loved it. The Pizza Bomber case, go to pizzabomber.com and get more information on it. But anyway, before we get into the main part of the episode, just some quick housekeeping. Apple reviews, Spotify, give us those 5 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just count up to 5. 5 is the magic number, like count. 5 is the number. The number is 5. Just to help us out. Those reviews mean a lot to us. Your comments mean a lot to us. Also, head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. And go see the book list from Jerry. Jerry has got some fantastic books out there. We've got 4 of them just added to our book list there. So merch, our mailing list too. Also follow us on the social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But where you got to be. We just got through recording our question and answer for Patreon. We had some terrific questions. We've gotten a lot of response to on our 911 episode about swatting, and our other one too. You can't make this shit up. We've got some funny ones on that. So, but at patreon.com/Game of Crimes, Murph, I'm telling you, just the Q&A session we did today went like 90 minutes. Great questions.
Absolutely. And keep them coming in. We want to hear from you listeners out there. If there's topics you think you'd like to hear that we're not covering, as long as it's related to law enforcement and telling you about what the true heroic acts are that they're doing out there, we'll certainly entertain them. But on Patreon, we'll address other issues as well. So come on over, check us out. If you don't like us, you can always unsubscribe, but see what it's all about.
Yeah, but we'll hunt you down, though, and then we'll ask you, why? Why did you do that to us? No, not really.
We might have to try to bribe you with a dozen donuts or something, because they were cops.
13 donuts. That sends a message. 13 is a lucky number. So Baker's dozen. That's right. And if you feel just like a pause for the cause, paypal.com, use our email address, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com or paypal.me/gameofcrimes, whatever it makes it easier for us to help you support us. Allow me to introduce myself to us. I think whatever Austin Powers said. Anyway, quick disclaimer. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We take the story seriously, but
We never take ourselves serious. If we did, this wouldn't be any fun at all.
and because we don't take ourselves seriously, and because it is that time when we always say, guess what time it is? So guess what time it is, Murph?
It's time for Small
Town
Police
blotter,
Blotters.
blah, 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 yeehaw, and the crowd goes wild. Hey, and guess what? We've got 3 good, quick police blotter ones, but I'm ending up with one paying homage to our Patreon episodes we call You Can't Make This Shit Up. I've got one that is a candidate for that. So, but first, Murph.
All right.
Suspicious activity, 5:53 p.m. A woman called police after being approached by a photographer in downtown who asked if he could take pictures of her feet. The photographer was not located. He's got a fetish. There's something wrong with this man. He's got a fetish. That's it.
I'm missing something here.
No, just ask if he could take pictures of her feet.
And that was it.
That was it. Suspicious activity.
Pervert.
Pervert.
Well, I guess that's better than asking to take a picture of a man's feet, right?
Yeah, that'd be a little weird. Another suspicious activity report, Murph. This one's at 2:48 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
This woke the lady up. An Ann Whalen Apartments resident awoke to find someone on her balcony looking into her bedroom. However, the woman later told police she thinks she may have been dreaming prior to calling 911.
And how much she had to drink before she went to bed last night?
That would be a good question. And what is your blood alcohol level, ma'am? Yeah.
You know, I tell you, sometimes when you're sleeping, you wake up and you think you've heard a noise, but then you're thinking, did I really hear that, or was that part of a dream?
Yeah, and if you're thinking, there's somebody out on my balcony,
Yeah,
you know,
no, I haven't gone that far.
Yeah, no, not that far. Hey, but guess how far you might have gone had you not left the D.C. area, you traitorous bastard. This one comes to us actually from Twitter. I found this on Twitter. It's from somebody named KD, but their handle is at Seatown Cyclone. So this one comes from the New York Daily News, but it is about the D.C. area. Steve, a turkey terrorizing Washington, D.C. residents crosses state boundaries into Maryland and is eluding 5 agencies. A wild turkey. This happened on May 2nd, 2022. A wild turkey that has been terrorizing Washington, D.C. residents has crossed into Maryland and is eluding 5 agencies from as many jurisdictions. The ferocious fowl's most frequent favorite haunt is Anacostia Riverwalk Trail near the Kenilworth Gardens, just east of the United States National Arboretum and not far from the D.C. border with Maryland. According to one of the local residents, Cliff Robertson, I was attacked there. He told the Wall Street, this is the Wall Street Journal. 3 weeks ago, I was trying to get away from him, and he came after me. He wouldn't let me pass. Even people on wheels aren't safe, as evidenced by a video posted by singer Dee Folarin, who had recently been attacked and then found himself trying to help a cyclist fend off the angry bird. Well, maybe if you sons of bitches quit eating us for Thanksgiving, we wouldn't be attacking you.
It's a shame that made the wall. That's what's news in the Wall Street Journal.
The whole takeaway from the story is this was in the Wall Street Journal. Slow news day, guys.
So it's in the Wall Street Journal, and then the New York Daily News posted it as well?
Yeah, they posted a synopsis, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It must have been a really, really slow. Everything's going on in the world, and that's what they put. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Well, speaking of that, now my buddy Rick Zach. My buddy Rick Zach, since Rick's a recovering firefighter, he thinks he's a hero, but he's not. Only cops are his heroes. But he sent us a good one. This one is definitely, if you can't make this shit up. This comes to us, believe it or not, from Kashmir, Washington, population 3,248. Salute. All right. So this one, the reason I say this for last, this is our homage to You Can't Make This Shit Up. A convicted felon accidentally shot himself in the genitals last month at an apartment in Kashmir. But, Steve, his problems didn't stop there. Cameron Jeffrey Wilson, 27, had a pistol tucked into his front pocket April 5th when the gun discharged, sending a bullet through his testicles and into his thigh. Now, instead of heading directly to the hospital, Wilson instructed his girlfriend to first drive to Lincoln Park and Wenatchee, I think, or something, where he gave the pistol to a friend. This dude is a 13-time convicted felon, so obviously it's illegal for him to possess a firearm. 13 times. Now here, Steve, this is where it gets better. As doctors and nurses performed surgery at Central Washington Hospital, a balloon containing marijuana slipped out of his anus. Now, No, it's
Damn,
worse
where'd
than
that
there.
come from?
Shelland County Sheriff's detectives were notified that Wilson had suffered a gunshot wound, which hospitals have to report it, and then responded to the hospital. They searched the car, found a bag of methamphetamine inside a pair of bloodstained jeans he'd taken off before entering the hospital.
Oh,
Now,
my gosh.
Detectives made the smart move. If you arrest him, you got to pay for his health care. Now, we declined to arrest Wilson at the hospital, instead issued an arrest warrant on suspicion of second-degree felon in possession of a firearm and unlawful possession of meth. What do we say, kids? Don't do meth. Now, he was charged on April 16th. So what does he do on April 18th? He turned himself in. A detective told corrections officers at the Chelan County Regional Justice Center of this dude's proclivity to store marijuana in unconventional places. So, Steve, during a strip search, another balloon of marijuana slipped from Wilson's anus. This dude has to lack anal retention. Is it just flapping back there? How can he not? I mean, now, Steve, it gets worse. So he was arrested, obviously charged with possession of a controlled substance in a correctional facility, but his troubles continued because what do they do to all phones in the jail, Steve?
They monitor them.
From the jail, Wilson made multiple calls to his girlfriend asking her not to cooperate with investigators. Authorities listened to the calls and now charged him with 4 counts of tampering with a witness. Dude, you just should have fucking give it up after the first arrest and say, you got me.
That's the reason he's been in there 13 times, and now this is 14, and maybe quite a while this time.
Well,
What?
12 of those were for felony stupidity, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a guy that is you're making all other criminals look horrible. You need to pick another occupation.
Well, you definitely don't want to run into our next guest then, dude, because our next guest, they'll find it. You can have it tucked up your anus. It doesn't matter. Him and his dog, Canine Colt, they're going to find it. So this is another installment of a fabulous canine story. We're mixing them up, getting a different viewing on this one. Christy Schiller, one of our fantastic guests again. I mean, she has given us several people to talk to. This week we are talking to Deputy Sergeant Randy Tooman.
Absolutely.
Down in Texas.
Yep.
He is a Texas kid, right? So
through and through.
Through and through. There is no doubt when you listen to him, through and through. So, but I'm telling you, Steve, man, this is a dude who loves what he does. He's got a great story. And the story we're going to talk about is how him and his canine partner, Colt, what they did. He can't go into all the specifics because they don't want to give away all of their secrets or tradecraft. But we're talking about the seizure of $100 million worth of fentanyl. Enough fentanyl to kill half the state of Texas.
Think about that. I mean, as huge as Texas is, unbelievable. I'm just a hell of a seizure. A nice lick here by Randy and his dog Colt. Just fantastic what they're doing out there. The risks that he is taking on a daily basis. Contracts put out on him by the cartels. He's going to tell you about all that. So I don't want to take away all his thunder here, but when we do the outro, we've got a little section I want to explain after you listen to Randy's story here. It's good. It's all good.
It's good. Well, and the only way to listen to Randy's story is for me to ask you the penultimate question, the question that everybody else is wanting to know about. Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes?
Here we go, everybody. Get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Randy and Colt, tell us your story here, guys.
All right, everybody. This is going to be fun. It's going to be fun because we just released our episode with Christy Schiller, the queen of the internet, Lucy Lips, the skirt with the dirt. Yeah, I mean, this is her saying stuff. And let me tell you what, somebody who goes from being a Playboy playmate, April of 96, not that I've done that kind of research, but as a victim of a crime, she recovers from being savagely assaulted. She sees a story on TV one night about an officer loses their canine to starting Canine for Cops, and then the great work she's done. Well, we told her, we said, look, you have to pay a price. And the price you pay is we want to talk to some other cool people. So she couldn't find anybody cool. And Randy Newman was the only guy hanging around we could talk to. So Randy, welcome, brother.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Hey, brother, it's an honor to have you on here. And at any time, feel free to give Morgan the salute because he gets it from me frequently.
Which is constitutionally protected free speech, as we discussed in a previous episode there, Murph. So, hey, Randy, welcome. Hey, so real quick, as we always do when we get started, we want to find out about you. So let's kind of pin this. Let's bookend this first by let's first of all talk about what agency do you work for right now? Where are you at, brother?
I'm at the Fayette County Sheriff's Office in Texas.
Because if we know where Dallas is, where are you from, Dallas?
So I'm on I-10, halfway between San Antonio and Houston. So kind of San Antonio, Houston, Austin area, right in the middle of that triangle.
Wow, that's got to be fun. Well, but let's talk about. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. You're about to say something.
I was just going to say, I believe that's probably considered a target-rich environment for your line of work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I-10 is interstates are always good for this kind of stuff. So, but let's
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about Randy. You got a good Texas accent there. So, in case we need to interpret for folks, Murph is our Southern interpreter. So,
I'm understanding every word he says.
yeah, I know you are. Hey, but Randy, what the help is that? So, how long have you been in law enforcement now, and what got you started?
So I've been law enforcement probably about 18 years now. Started probably because I was just unsure of what else I wanted to do, and being a cop looked like the most fun that I could have and stay out of trouble. I had a
Well, wait a
friend.
minute. Did you get into? Did you fracture a few laws as a Ute in Texas? There.
I don't know. I walked that line quite a bit for sure.
Well, where'd you
Didn't
grow
we
up
all?
at?
I grew up in Belleville, a little small town. Pastor
Is that close
parties.
to where you are now?
Yeah.
Hey, real quick question. Is it true? Is the TV series Friday Night Lights, do people really take football that seriously down in Texas?
They absolutely do.
Okay. We've
I believe that.
we've taken care of one myth there. Anyway, but you now did you go what did you do right out of high school then? Did you do anything else before you got into law enforcement, or was this like your first real job?
This was my first real job. I mean, I did construction. I grew up working construction with my dad since I can remember. Kind of followed in his footsteps after high school. Go to college part time, work construction, and then, I mean, after a while, just it wasn't for me. Dark to dark every day of the week. Nothing's fun. No adrenaline. So just want to start looking into law enforcement.
So where'd you first apply it? When you started looking at what was there a certain event that made you to say, I mean, did you come into work one day and just go, I just can't take this anymore? And just decided to start looking around, or was it kind of a progression of things?
Well, I had a friend. I'd been friends with this guy Matt Walsh since third grade. We're still friends. We still work. We both work dope together to this day. But so he had gotten to law enforcement. He was on patrol. Just listening to his stories, the foot chases, the little scuffles, the little dope pops. It sounded all interesting to me, and I knew it's something that I would probably be interested in.
Did you ever go for a ride along or get any introduction to it other than walking the fine line, as you said, as a Ute?
I didn't. No ride-alongs, nothing. Just one day, this is what I want to do, and I went and signed up.
Where'd you?
How old were you
Yeah.
when you decided to become a cop?
22.
Where did you apply?
Well, I applied at College Station Police Department, Bryan Police Department. They had programs to where they would hire you on and send you to the academy, so you kind of got paid while you were in the academy. But of course, I got denied. Nothing's ever easy for Randy Tooman, so I had to put myself through the academy, and then once I got the state license, then I applied in a few other places and started in a small sheriff's office, Colorado County.
I remember. I mean, Texas is huge. I mean, just so many counties and stuff. So when you say small, are we talking like small, small, or just Texas small? Which Texas that's large compared to every place else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what I mean by small is a large area, but only a few people. So like for instance, this county, we're probably have close to 1,000 square miles just in our county. And when I first started over here, there was three of us on, a north, a south, and a float. So when I say small, I mean the department's small, not the area.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was
Holy
getting.
cow.
What's the population of your county now?
Man, I couldn't even tell you. I don't know.
Well, that's why we have Siri. What quick? It's Fayette County, right? So, hey, hey Siri, what is the population of Fayette County, Texas?
In 2020, the population of Fayette County was 24,435.
Salute. All right. So, hey, technology, Al Gore's amazing internet, man. We can figure all this stuff out. So, but where was your first law enforcement job? You said what was the sheriff's office, Colorado County?
Yeah, Colorado County Sheriff's Office. And it was fun. I mean, I'm not going to bash on nobody. It was more of a reactive. They're not really into young Thundercats being proactive. And, I hit the streets. I'm trying to put everybody in jail every night. So they put the brakes on that and, kind of got disgruntled there for a little while. But, I stuck it out it's kind of where I bumped into the love for interdiction too was out there, and I got my hand slapped for that as well.
Well,
Well, you said you had to put yourself through the academy. Explain to us what you had to go through and where's the academy at and all that.
So TEACS, which is Texas A&M, it's an extension of Texas A&M. I think the academy was probably 6 to 8 months, something like that, every day. It was nothing hard, a lot of learning the law. The physical aspect of it was pretty simple. But once you got through that, you were licensed through the state to apply for a peace officer's job.
So you go through firearms training, defensive tactics, all that kind of stuff. Did you learn surveillance, anything like that?
We might have brushed on some stuff like that, but nothing in depth for sure.
The way they do surveillance is Texas. They just take off that big white hat, nobody can see them, right?
I got to tell you, man. So Javier and I were speaking to a group of people in Victoria, Texas. Do you know where that is, Randy?
Absolutely.
So we were doing our little show there, and I mentioned about Pablo Escobar's ranch, and I said, it was we think it was about 10,000 acres. I said, I'm really not sure, but whatever it was huge. And so when we finished, the sheriff of the county came up, and he said, I want to thank y'all for coming here, but Murph, I got to straighten something out. A 10,000 acre ranch here in Texas, we call that a ranchette. Holy cow. What do you say, Sheriff?
Yeah, man. But now when you started on the sheriff's office there, in a lot of places, a lot of deputies we've talked to, they start off working the jail first. Did you have to do the jail route and go to patrol, or did you start on patrol?
I did, man. Luckily, because it was such a small department, they were in need of patrol officers. So when you hired on, that's where you went to patrol. I mean, it had its advantages and disadvantages to be in a small department, because it was a small department, that the call volume wasn't super high. So you had time to be proactive and do kind of what interests you. So, yeah, didn't start in the jail, went straight to the streets.
So
I know that didn't break your heart, did it?
No.
Hey, just out of curiosity, how much did it cost you to put yourself through the academy?
Oh, man, you're talking 18 years ago, bro. I barely know what happened yesterday. I don't know.
Which, if you're a defense attorney listening, you just forget what you heard there.
Yeah, no, I don't remember. It wasn't. I mean, nothing that wasn't
Nothing outrageous.
No, maybe a couple $1,000. I'm just guessing.
But now, did you work though during the time while you're going to the academy, like on weekends and stuff, to pay your freight, or how'd that work?
Yeah, I worked on the weekends. Still doing the construction stuff.
All right, man. That is you talked about going from 12-hour days doing construction. So you were doing that, probably having to study, right? And then doing construction on the weekends. I bet you were finally glad to finish the academy and get that first job, no matter what it was, right?
I mean, being a cop is easy, for the most part. To me, when I first started, as far as the labor aspect of what I was used to, man, being a cop was, man, it was gravy.
There's so many of us that I know. I'm not sure about you, Morgan. I know Javier and I both. We worked a night shift so we could go to college in the daytime. And when you finally get that degree, it's like the weight of the world's lifted off of your shoulders. You don't have to do all that studying and attending class and falling asleep and all that stuff.
I worked midnights for the first 6 months. I was taking EMT training too when I started off as a city officer. So that first time I worked day shift, I'm going, what is this thing they call sunlight, man? I was sleeping with tinfoil over my windows and stuff so I could sleep. But
and that was in his cruiser.
I don't think your body ever adapts to coming off a night. I did the first probably 6 or 8 years was nights, and it's
tough.
Yeah,
it is.
Especially when they rotate the shifts. When I was a trooper, we'd work 3 nights, 3 days, 3 days off. So you might go to work at Friday night at 6 p.m. and get off at 3 a.m. in the morning. By the time you get done going to work on Tuesday, you were going to work at 7 a.m. in the morning and getting off at 3 p.m. So, I mean, it was just like, it was 5 a.m. I should say. We went to work at 5 a.m. and got off at 2 p.m. So anyway, long story short, back to you. So but what you said, you kind of got your hands slapped. How did you start getting this bug for wanting to do interdiction? Was it something you learned, some training you went to, or did you just start stopping a lot of cars and saying, hey man, there's a lot of shit in these cars?
Actually, there was a trooper, one of our state troopers was on an interdiction team, and he worked in our county. So I started hanging out with him and seeing he got some pretty decent pops off the interstate. So I started collecting all the knowledge I could from him and applying it to myself, how I was working cars on the interstate. And one day, probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I stopped a crew cab Chevrolet truck for no license plate lamp and got in a pursuit with it. Guy took off running, chased after him, didn't find him. I get back to the car and there's 1,284 pounds of weed. And to me, I'd never seen anything. Nobody in the area had ever seen anything like that. So, man, from right then, I was hooked.
And that's the exact thing. The same thing I said about DEA, because the first case I got to work on was I was a uniform cop. I saw 2 ounces of powder coke. The first case I got to work on, it wasn't my case. I was just doing some undercover on it. We picked up 400 kilos of cocaine down in the Caribbean. And I tell everybody, I went from 2 ounces to 880 pounds. I was addicted to cocaine, just in a different
Yeah,
way.
but
And
Murph,
that's exactly what happened to you, Randy.
you also didn't believe it. There's not 400 kilos of coke in the entire world.
No, I've never seen anything like that.
Man, I listened to a few of the guys y'all spoke to previously, and it blows my mind. I mean, I think I'm out here hitting big lows, and man, who knows what's getting by.
Yeah, but let me tell you, don't discount that yet, because a lot of these big cases start from interdiction stops, and we'll get into that too. Because in fact, one of the cases we talked with Paul Crane and Abe Perez about, those were the two real DEA agents who caught Pablo. One of the big cases they started with is because they were bored. But
Chapo, not Pablo.
Oh, Pablo. I'm sorry. One's dead, one's alive. What's the difference? They're no longer a problem. And Chapo is not tunneling out of this prison in Florence ADX. But,
oh no.
Yeah, but they were that one big case Paul talked about where he got like 1,000 kilos or 1,200 kilos. All started because they were bored and they saw a big Cadillac or whatever driving around, and they decided to follow it. So these cases start with that. But let's talk about this first stop that you got. When you turned around, was the dope concealed in any way, or was it just in the bed of the truck? How did you find it?
I mean, it was 1,284 pounds in a pickup truck. It was everywhere. I think the back seats were even pulled out just to stack the bundles up to the roof. Yeah, it was.
You could probably smell it when you walked up to it.
I mean, my
Probably
adrenaline.
when he drove by, he went, "That smells like weed."
My adrenaline was pumping so much from the pursuit and the foot chase that even initially clearing the car for bodies for other people before I continued to run after the guy, it never even clicked until I got back and like, holy shit, like that's all weed, Yeah,
That's a buttload of weed.
it was.
Now, did you ever make an arrest on that, or did that guy get away totally?
No, he totally got away. Yeah, they hit the woods out here, man. Most of them, I think they turn into the trees, man. I don't know. The disappear.
Yeah, and he's just a mule anyway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And most of the time, these guys don't even know who they're working for. They're just told, drive this pickup from here to here. And even if you catch them, all they can do is go back, well, this is where I picked the truck up at. I mean, but that's why a lot of the stuff is so important. I mean, the evidence that you collect. So, but this is before you had a dog, right? This is pre-canine?
Yeah, so this was before I had a dog, and then actually, so we were told to stay off the interstate. They were more into patrolling the back roads and stuff like that. So I had made this stop, and then maybe a week later, I was doing the same thing out on the interstate in the early morning hours and hit another, probably 160 pounds, wasn't a whole bunch, but then I actually was told to stay off the interstate, and so I wasn't allowed to work the interstate anymore, and there was a position that came open for a dog and interdiction, and unfortunately, the good old buddy system, it wasn't going to me, so.
Is that because you were a problem employee, Randy? Am I detecting the fact is that you were wanting to do a lot more work than what was being allowed?
I probably caused a lot of work for people that didn't really want to work. Maybe that has something to do with it.
I have no sympathy for those people.
We used to call them road, retired on active duty, or officer do nothing. We had a few of the officer do's, but how long were you at the Colorado Sheriff's Office?
So about 4.5 years. And I got to the point to where, man, I kind of was disappointed with law enforcement. I mean, that was my first job. I didn't really know that there was anything other than that. So, I mean, it got to the point to where, man, I wasn't doing anything. I was sitting around just letting hours pass just to go home. One of the guys that was my partner over there on night shift actually got a job over here in Fayette County. And then he started talking to me about how different it was and I should come over here. And so that's how it got started.
Now, are you adjoining counties?
Yeah, we touch.
Okay. But I-10 runs through them both, so that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, it does.
So when did you, so you 4.5 years on, did you get on right away then at the sheriff's office in Fayette County?
I did. So I kind of had already made a little reputation. The sheriff over here, they already knew kind of what kind of work I was doing over there. So I wasn't too quick to come. After a little bit of, pressure, I finally gave in and came over here, and it was the best. I mean, it's totally opposite of what I was used to, and the best move I could have ever made.
So how many deputies do you have, sworn officers there in Fayette County?
So I'm not gonna know exactly, but probably about 32 to 35, something like that.
Which sounds like a lot of officers, but when you divide them up into shifts and off days, you get a couple guys per shift.
Yeah, so we actually, I mean, it's more covered than it has been in a long time. So we probably have uh, about three to four on a shift.
Yeah,
To
but
cover a whole county.
Yeah, for 1,000 square miles.
1,000 square miles. Let's just put that in perspective. I mean, that's probably bigger than the state of Rhode Island. You know, imagine
could be.
patrolling Rhode Island with just 4 troopers out, at the whole time. So 4 deputies, but that's okay. What's the saying down in Texas? One riot, one ranger. That's all it takes
That's it.
to work that shit. So when you go over there, what did you start off doing? Obviously working. Did you have to go through the jail or did you go straight to the road?
No, I went straight to the road, nighttime patrol. Ended up with the same partner that I had before. And, started working the county. Putting people in jail. And didn't have any issues. I knew it was going to be a good place to work. I was still on FTO, and I arrested a guy. I can't remember what he was arrested for, but so he was being handcuffed and he spit in my face. So
Ooh.
I pushed him into the car, as he spit on me. And later the next day, I was walking by the sheriff's office, and the dude's wife was in there complaining to the sheriff. And I kind of slowed down and started listening to see what they were talking about. And when I heard the sheriff tell that lady, if I was there when your husband spit in my deputy's face, I would still be beating his ass. I said, this is going to be the place for me. So I knew 100% he had my back. And I mean, ever since then, it's never changed.
That's outstanding because that's rare.
Well, it's rare. And when you listen to Ron White, that comedian, he talks about he's from Texas. He goes, in Texas, if you kill us, we will kill you back. In fact, we got an express lane for the death penalty. They do things a little different down in Tejas, down there. But you start. So, I mean, you start getting a good idea. But at what point does the opportunity come to start working with dogs? I mean, did you have to work into that, apply to that? How does that come about for you?
Yeah, so it took a little time. I did the nighttime patrol. Then after that, I did plainclothes narcotics for a while here, and I kind of worked with a good friend of mine, that Matt in Austin County. We worked together plainclothes narcotics, and then we had seized some property out here, and the sheriff asked, is there anything specific that I wanted? And at the time, you hit the county real hard with narcotic search warrants and stuff like that. It'll slow down for a little
It'll
bit.
dry up, yeah.
Right. So in that spare time, I would get in a patrol car and go hit the interstate and start, stopping cars, because my real passion was interdiction, man. Getting the big dope, for me, that's what I enjoyed doing. And I started hitting some loads of dope and some loads of money off the interstate. And, the sheriff allowed me to get a dog, and it kind of just all transitioned from, hey, if you want to just do that full time, we'll find some new narcotics guys. So that's kind of where it started.
Let's go back to a couple of your seizures you had pre-canine. What was as you made the stops, what kind of things, again, without giving away state secrets, but what were you doing out there on the interstate to give you enough reason? Now, this is where we have to educate people. A lot of people say, well, you didn't have probable cause for the stop. Folks don't need probable cause for the stop, just need probable cause to arrest. So what kind of things were happening on interstate that were drawing your attention?
So back then when I first started, man, I didn't do a whole bunch of interdiction classes. I didn't really know what the smart way to do it. So it was just a lot of stops, man. A lot of just, if I seen a violation, you were getting pulled over, until I was able to build kind of what I was looking for this area. I think it's different for, every time you cross a major metropolitan area, I think your traffickers change. And once I figured this out, then I was able to start, I guess, targeting the vehicles a little bit smarter.
Yeah, because a lot of times too, it's about the vehicle as well. A lot of people say, "Well, you're picking on me because I'm this or I'm that." Now, a lot of times, what you're looking for is there are certain vehicles they would have. You've got this database. I think Customs had it, or Border Patrol, the Traps database. You could see Mercuries or Fords back in my day, or whatever else. They would have. You would understand based on this Traps database where they would conceal dope. So you'd be looking at the vehicles. What were some of the popular vehicles people were using during that time to do trafficking?
Well, when I first started, it was a lot of work trucks. The oil industry were real
Huge
big.
out
So
there. Yeah.
yeah, so anything oil related, work related. I mean, an F-150 and F-250 that came by, bro, it was good. So older models, I don't want to get too much into the details because I don't know who listens to this, but there's specific stuff that we look for, uh, pretext, on the stop.
A small p. You're not looking at people, you're looking at actions, you're looking at vehicles and behaviors and stuff. But now that how did the world change for you when you went through the interdiction training before when you were just trying to brute force it?
Well, it wasn't interdiction training, man. It was kind of just putting together everything I was learning. I was so ate up with it. I mean, it wasn't an interest, man. It was a passion, a discipline. I mean, I was so ate up that, I mean, I shit you not. I had a notebook where I'd write down like 2005 Ford F-150 stopped Wednesday at 150. This is what I got out of it, and I was like, it makes no sense to me at all now because the dope's moving every day, all day and night. But at that time, I'm like, shit, when am I getting the most amount of seizures? And whenever that was, I mean, my eyes were wide open. So I think I just learned a lot by initiating stuff myself.
You never went to like Operation Pipeline school the DEA puts on or any of that?
No, later on, after I had already figured it out, we kind of go to these interdiction conferences, but it's more about the getaway than the classes. But
Always is.
yeah, I did.
But if you're listening, Sheriff, he takes notes during the whole time and he attends every class. Randy's there 8 hours a day.
Sheriff's there with me. He knows exactly what I'm doing.
Oh darn. Okay.
Not that,
So I did take a HITS class, a highway interdiction training system. So those guys work on I-20 up there, Billy and Ronnie, and there was some good information. We went and worked the Sarita Foul checkpoint for a day, and then they went over some compartment stuff. But I started realizing, I mean, you can watch Net Geo, Border Wars, and learn everything you need to know because every single thing they were getting on that bridge is what's passing me on the highway.
did you have access to the El Paso Intelligence Center where you could call in
Epic.
and get information that way?
Yeah, so when I first started, man, I have access to anything. I barely had a computer, but now I have. I mean, I've put money into the seizure fund, and I have everything. I have everything I need, and it makes interdiction so much easier. I have Epic, I have Dice, Darts, two LPR systems. I have a lot of access that helps.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're the first person we've had on here, I mean, we've had multiple guests on the show. You're the first person to mention dice and darts, and that's something that was started by DEA Special Operations Division in conjunction with the OCDEF Fusion Center and some other centers.
Okay, hold on. Time out, guys. We
excited
have
to
a
hear all
rule too.
this.
You can't throw out a bunch of acronyms. So Epic is El Paso Information Center. Do you know what
Yep.
DICE and DARTS stand for, Randy?
I don't. The other one's Diesel too. It's all the same system.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, Steve, when the last time you've looked into that stuff, but it's come a long way.
Yeah, and I've been retired since 13, so it's been a while, bro.
Well, no, Steve's been retired since 02. He just got paid until 013.
Oh, wait, let's see here. We got the dice is, well, it's not showing me what
That's
the
okay.
acronym
We will
stands for.
get into the acronyms later. We will keep the story moving forward. But suffice it to say that when things first started, I was one of 4 troopers that went through some interdiction training with some guys from DEA because we had Highway 54 was part of Operation Pipeline. So US 54 coming up out of Mexico. US 83 was the only north-south unbroken highway in the United States. So we didn't know what we were looking for at that time. And I know personally, I missed a lot of stuff out on the highway because I had no idea what I was looking for. But once we started getting a better idea, things started changing. But go back for a minute, Randy, on a couple of the seizures. When before the dog, when you got some seizures, what was one of the largest cash seizures you got?
Man, I don't even know if I hit cash until after I got a dog. It was more about the dope for me. Money, and still to this day, man, money's always unfortunately more of a headache because everybody has something
Wants
to
a part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think my first money seizure was probably only about $78,000, which is enough because sheriff had said, at that time it was known that if you got a money seizure over 50 grand, then he was going to let you get whatever kind of patrol car you want. So my first money seizure was for the purpose of me getting a black Tahoe. That's what I wanted. So Yeah, that was the first I got was about $78,000 and a little bit of weed, but
Yeah, because the other thing too, we want to be careful if so people understand. It's not just going out just because you find money. You just don't take it. I mean, there are rules around it too because there has to be indicia of drug activity or linked to drug trafficking, or because we have to be careful is that if you just start seizing money for the sake of seizing money, it starts setting bad case precedent. So, but a lot of your stuff, you were finding, like you said, even a little bit of weed tied to it, or indicators that they're involved in drug trafficking, was enough to seize the money. When you seized that money that time, did you guys have to go through the feds to seize it? Did they, like the FBI or DEA, adopt the seizure for you, or did you guys do it through the state?
yeah, fortunately here, man, we can do that on the state level. There's a money laundering charge. It's over 10 grand if you can't prove. Of course, using common sense, but if you can't prove where you obtain the money from, then it's on you to prove that in court.
Yeah.
And the person holding that money has all the legal authority in the world to just show you that it's legitimate income. It's not that you stopped somebody and just took their money because they had a large amount of cash. There's other factors that go into consideration that lead you to believe that that's drug-related proceeds
Yeah,
and
absolutely,
gives you the authority to
absolutely.
seize it at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this of course was as more of a small mid-level type seizure. The 78,000. It was San Antonio back to Houston. So there was dope with the drugs and the guys. They're more of your gang banger type guys. They flush the money in the toilet. It don't make a fuck to me. That was their exact word. So when you get into the cartel or trafficking side of the money, it's obvious. It's super obvious. It's vacuum sealed. It's rubber banded. It's grease and fabric softener and
A lot more than
compartments. Oh
$78,000.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, now we're running into this little spill of human trafficking. They seem to only send between 30 and 60 back at a time. But yeah, when you're talking dope, it's over 100 grand at a time.
Well, yeah, it has to be because
Mm.
otherwise, from a logistics standpoint, it makes it so difficult to have 5 or 6 cars. You want to minimize your risk, but yeah,
Right.
the money is. You're right. Money's a headache, but money's also an enabler too. Like you said, it helps you get equipment in ways that your normal taxes and stuff couldn't support it. Um, when you so let's walk through getting your first dog. Let's talk about the process of what it's like to become a canine officer. So a position comes open. How does that work? How did you get your first canine there at Fayette County?
So it was something because of the interdiction at the time. For me, it was get every tool that I could get that I could use on the interstate to seize dope. And so the dog was a big tool. So the sheriff pretty much gave me free reign, told me, hey, find a place, get a dog, I'll let you get whatever you want from wherever. And I ended up, there was a couple places that caught my interest. One of them was a lot busier. I forget the name of the kennel now. They were doing a bunch of military contract stuff at the time. So I ended up going with ASCT. And once they went overseas, picked out some dogs, thought the dog that, found a dog that they thought would work best for me. And I ended up going up there. I think it was like almost a month to get all the initial training I needed with the dog and for myself being a new handler.
And that was
And
Culpeper, Virginia.
Yes, it was in Culpeper.
yeah, that's the American Society of Canine Trainers, ASCT.
And there's also another one down at Front Royal. So you know what? So there's another one down at Front Royal, a great. So we'll talk. Let's talk about that next part.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. I hit the right time of the year. It was beautiful down there, man. It was super nice.
Were you in the fall
It
or the
is.
spring?
I think I was in the spring, and I was actually near. I don't know why this sticks in my mind, but the ranch, I guess, where the Superman had like paralyzed himself, was somewhere over in that area.
Huh.
Oh, really?
I'll have to
I didn't
look.
know
I didn't
that.
realize that. I know there's a lot of history down in Culpeper. In fact, that's Washington's his Culpeper ring, what they made AMC Turnabout and stuff. So a lot of history down in that area. In fact, there's a couple bed and breakfasts down there we've been to there, so it's beautiful. But there's another huge canine training facility over at Front Royal, Steve, and I think there's some Fed stuff that there where ATF, DEA, military. So for some reason, a couple places in Virginia seem to have that. But you did
Yeah.
the research on this, so you go down there. What does the training involve? And I'm really interested too. And when they say they wanted to pick out a dog that was good for you, what did they do? Like a psychological exam on you? Have you pick out shapes and colors? What?
Man, it's funny you say that because basically that's what it is. I mean, so Chris Acock is the guy that I've been dealing with for years, and He has a PhD. He's a doctor, and he's brilliant with dogs, man. So exactly what you said, man. He talked to me uh, several different times, kind of grasp my personality and how I work and my whole demeanor, and basically went and found a dog that he thought would work best with me and brought it back.
Wow.
Yeah.
What breed was your first dog?
So the first one I had was a black German Shepherd.
What was the name?
His name was Knight, and he passed away pretty quick. We had him probably a little over a year, so he
Oh,
must
wow.
he must have been a couple years old. But one of the adjoining counties that got in a pursuit, a trooper got in a pursuit with a suspect that ran through a house and took off on foot. And being a young handler, I mean, I'll take all the responsibility. It's all my fault. But they say those dogs will work until they die. Man, that's literally what they'll do. So we
Oh, man.
we tracked the guy. It was hot. It was a dried out like lake with a bunch of cane and stuff that went down. So we kind of got twisted and turned around in that, and then I mean, he just overheated.
Oh,
Yeah, so
that's a shame.
so the lost the first one, and then the second one took a little bit hard. It took a little bit more time to get. I don't know if there was like a shortage on good dogs or something in Europe, but went back to ASCT and did the same thing and ended up with a Mal.
So why is Europe such a hub for getting dogs from?
So I was told, I asked that same question too, and I was told that just because the general love for dogs in Europe is different. If the dog's going to be purchased or not purchased, they're still going to put the same amount of time and effort into the dog, other than like here where the dog would just be kenneled until it was sold and then it would be worked with.
So did they do a lot of training in Europe before they brought it over? Was there a lot of pre-work done before the dog is brought to the U.S.?
No, it's not trained there. It comes over completely green. I think the only thing they're looking for over there, I mean, they might have some obedience. The dog's super young still, maybe a year old. Some basic obedience, and I think just the prey drive and the hunt drive is kind of what they're looking for initially while the dog's still over there.
How do they evaluate that? Have you seen them do it, or did they tell you about how they evaluate that?
Yeah, so I would assume that the prey drive, the hunt drive is what the dog needs to hunt for the dope. So I guess an example would be like take a ball and throw it into 6 foot grass and see how long the dog's gonna hunt before he gives up. And I mean, a good dog just don't give up. He just keeps hunting until he finds the ball. And the prey drives just the play, how active the dog is and how much energy he's willing to put into what he's doing.
Now you said Mal. That's it. How do you pronounce it? It's a Belgian. Is it Malinois? Malinois?
Yeah, well, we say Malinois, but it looks like Malinois. I mean, I guess
It's French. You have to say Malinois and pair it with a fine wine. You silly Americans. So
Well, it comes from Belgium. How's that a French word?
but have you not seen what they speak over there?
In Belgium?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have.
there's Flemish, there's French, there's all sorts of stuff. So yeah,
Yeah. These people are very talented.
yeah, they make great beer too, and I have a bunch of it in my basement as we speak. But hey, but in terms of the training and stuff though too, once they match the dog up with you and they think it's the right temperament, how does the initial introduction go? What do they do basically on your first day of training? When do you see the dog right away? How does this, because I don't know. I've never been through canine training. So how does that process work for you to get introduced to your new dog?
man, it's been so long since it's been day one. But I mean, I know it was all positive. I can't remember exactly what we did on the first day. Maybe some ball throws. Just some positive engagement between the handler and the dog, and then just slowly start working into obedience and playing the dope game, playing the dope game with the dog to hide the dope, and the dog finds the dope and you reward them. That's all positive between you and the dog, and you start the learning process.
What would the price range be for a dog like that?
Well, according to Christy, it's only $1,000. That's what she thought they were. Just $1,000 for a dog.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
She's paid some pretty steep amounts for dogs. I think that dog was, he was nothing special, young. I think maybe 12, 12,000. Yeah, just for a green young dog.
I think she said they were paying about 15 on average for a new dog, and then plus you had the training expenses on top of that.
Yeah, so that I was referring to the first dog, yeah, the dog I have now, I know she paid quite a bit more for, and you're exactly right. There's some handlers getting dogs now that were being pre-trained for like SWAT and stuff. So are they titled or whatever? So yeah, they come at a much steeper price.
Go back to that training for a minute. So a lot of this is you working with the dog. How much time is spent in the classroom? How much is time spent with the dog, when you're out there training?
So it's a lot of classroom and a lot of dogs. So obviously you can't run the dog all day. Most of the dog stuff comes in increments. You run the dog 15, 20 minutes at a time, and then you put them up, and then it's book work. And I mean, at ASCT we learned so much about dogs. I mean, how they breathe, their olfactory sensory, their how they store scents. I mean, just everything. The scent receptors in their nose, the capabilities they have for smelling. I mean, it was a lot of book work, a lot of tests that you have to pass before you can certify with the dog.
So it's not just as simple as getting a dog and going to work.
It's not, man. That guy Chris, man. It's his passion, so he doesn't take it lightly, and he puts you. He gives you everything you need to. Later on down the road, there's obstacles that you have to fix, and you have to figure out how to fix them on your own. Because you're stuck in Texas with the dog, and you're not in Virginia. Of course, a phone call away, but a lot of that stuff you can figure out just because of the knowledge of the dog.
What was the most
Wow.
interesting thing you learned about your second dog, your new dog? What was the most interesting thing you learned about dogs that you never knew?
When I first got dogs, I knew absolutely nothing. I mean, being from Texas, we had dogs, but I mean, they weren't to the standards of these dogs. So I've learned, man, so much. The drive, the bond, the scent capabilities, I mean, the how well they see and hear. I mean, everything. I've learned a lot.
Are you married and have children, and your dog lives with the family?
Yeah, so I'm married. I do have kids, and the dog stays outside in the cage. I learned a hard lesson. These dogs are working dogs; they're not pets. So I'll just tell you the story real quick. This is with the second dog that I got. I was living in a condo, and so the first dog I got. Let me back up even further. When we started seizing dope, we started running out of nobody was really making seizures like I was before I got here. So we ran out of storage to store the dope I was getting. So we had to build another building. Well, in the meantime, they were having to store dope in little metal sheds that were in the back security gate where we were keeping some of the vehicles. Long story short, Trustee gets wind of where the dope's at. He goes to Austin, him and his gangbanger friends. I'm keeping the dog at the sheriff's office. They poison the dog. They cut the back of the shed open. They steal hundreds of pounds of hydro. So the reason I tell you all that now is because now the second dog I have, he is living with me in my condo in a crate. So he goes from the truck to the crate. Well, I had to pick my kid up from school, and she goes upstairs first. She's probably 5 or 6 at the time. She goes upstairs. She changes for soccer. I come in with the dog. She shoots across the living room. Dog grabs her by the face. Just reaction. So
Oh
yeah,
man.
no working dogs stay in my house now. So they're all outside. I mean, she ended up with some staples and stitches in her face. Nothing life changing, but I learned a valuable lesson for sure.
Oh my
And
goodness.
is that because the dog perceived her as a threat to you, or just a threat, or as somebody like a fleeing fugitive?
I think it's prey. I mean, I think the dog, it's like a rabbit that just took off across the living room. The dog's initial response is to grab it. It's not like he grabbed her and violently attacked her. He grabbed her and immediately let her go. But because of the training the dog sees every day, she's running across the room with a shirt that she's wailing around. During training, we have bad guys, you know, whipping sticks and waving their hands and running, and it's just what the dog's used to engaging in.
And your dogs now, they're trained for drugs and for attack. Is that right?
Yeah, so I've had all dual purpose dogs. So they track handler protection, which is bite work, patrol, building searches and such, and then narcotics.
How much more intensive does that make the training, with when you have the dual purpose, or the multidisciplinary dogs? I mean, does your training extend farther then? I mean, what was 4 weeks now becomes 8 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even the initial training, and then just training every day. That are on a weekly basis. You have more disciplines to train, and whatever you're going to train, it takes more time, but it's well worth it.
So, what does an average day look like when you have a working dog? I mean, both when you're on duty and off duty. So, let's talk about on duty. I mean, you look like say part of it is training. How do you go about training every day with the canine?
So usually we set a day aside a week for training, which is a full day of canine group training. But on a daily basis, for me, I like to break the week down. Like I'll plan ahead of time before I get to work. Say I'm going to do some dope hides in the morning. So I get to the sheriff's office. I have a seizure lot where I store all my seized vehicles that I've gotten. So I'll throw out 2 or 3 dope hides, let them sit for a little bit, run the dog. Takes about 30 minutes. Put the dog in the truck, then we go work the road. So I do that a couple times a week, 2 or 3 times a week. And then I might hit buildings. We're not really doing a lot of building searches. We're more highway interdiction, traffic stops. So buildings I might hit once a week. The tracking, at least a couple times a week. You can do some handler laid tracks where you don't even, you just lay a track, put a toy, and then walk the track back the same way you went, and then have the dog track your track. It works well. And then a lot of the stuff, man, like the patrol stuff, the building searches and stuff like that, you get done that one day when you have a group of people that can help hide and be in the suit and be bad guys.
Be in the suit, being in the bite suit.
Yeah, the bite suit, the bite sleeve, or we muzzle the dog. And
Yeah, and when somebody pisses you off, you forget to put the bite suit on them and say, "Hey, go!" No, no, no. That would be bad. Hey, go back. The other thing I'm fascinated too, because you see it with them, is that people think the objective for the dog is to find the dope. It's not. The objective is not for them to find the dope. It's to get the reward after finding the dope, right? I mean, is that part of the theory behind it? In other words, they find the dope to get the reward.
yeah, so the dog, I mean, the training, the initial training the dog receives, you're trying to get the dog to want to find the dope because he's wanting the ball. So I mean, yeah, he wants the toy. He doesn't care about the dope. Yeah, so initially you have to like put it in the dog's mind that where you see this odor is where you find your toy. And so that's what he's looking for is the toy.
How do you reward them when they don't find anything, when there's nothing to be found, like you've got a completely clean car?
So he doesn't get rewarded if he doesn't find anything. If there's no dope, even if he alerts to something and there's not, residual odor or can last, in cars when there's not the dope's not actually present. So, you might get a good alert, but there's nothing present. He doesn't get rewarded. A lot of it, his reward. I mean, your drive, the way you're running your dog, your energy, the energy you're putting off. That's what the dog feeds off of. So he doesn't have to be rewarded every single time for doing something.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so at what point do you reward the dog? It's like, we're going to talk about one of your seizures up here, but it's like sometimes it takes you a while to open up the vehicle or to find the stuff. So at what point does the reward come during that?
So on live and training, it can be different. Timing. Uh, it plays an important role when it comes to being a canine handler. Like the timing that the dog's getting paid. Like during training, I might put a dope hide where I know exactly where it is. And as soon as the dog gives me a response, an indication, the ball's already bouncing off the car and hitting him in the face. Whereas to on the side of the road, if I get an alert, well, first of all, he hasn't really, we haven't been to the source. We haven't located the dope yet. And I can't bounce a ball off the side of a car on the highway because it's going to bounce all over the place. So it doesn't have to be right away, or it can be, you put the dog up, or the dog finds the dope, and then you redeploy him and maybe give him a tug. So it's always changing. It keeps the dog always guessing.
What does that mean when you give him a tug?
It's another reward. So the dog, well, at least my dog, all dogs are different. So my dog has Kongs, which is like a ball that bounces he likes, and then a tug, which is like a
Like a rope toy or something?
exactly, and he just tugs on it.
It's like you, Murph. That's how we reward you. You get a cup of coffee if you stay awake for the whole episode.
There you go. Hey, I work cheap. I'm easy and cheap. But can you say, and I don't want you to give up anything you're not comfortable giving up. Can you say when your dog finds something, how does he alert?
Yeah, so he sits. Well, he's supposed to sit. He's passive, but he's so high energy that if he may like punch it a couple times. There's some videos. I mean, he'll punch the door a couple times, and then he sits and he's looking straight up. I mean, he's a passive alert, but sometimes he throws in a little aggressiveness. But
I believe it was DEA who learned that lesson when we were talking to some guys about an interdiction about the difference between passive and active dogs. They started going to passive dogs because somebody who taped a kilo of dope underneath their leg and got hit on by an active dog, basically he shredded his gonads going after the dope.
yeah, so the previous dogs I've had were aggressive alerts, which I liked, man. It looked pretty. I love seeing my dog tear up a dope card, just scratching the shit out of it. But on the other hand, finding locations to train on, people don't really want you using their cars on the car lot if your dog's scratching themselves.
Hey, that was a $50,000, Ford F-150. Sorry, pal.
But thanks for your cooperation.
Good luck getting buffing those things out of the clear coat, on your paint there.
Yeah.
But so now, how many years now have you been working with the canine?
Oh man, I want to say I got the first dog in 2009 or 2010. So, what, 12 years, maybe?
You mentioned another word too, the bond. Let's talk about the bond between a handler and their dog. The Belgians, we heard the Mals are of just what I was reading about some of them, that like they are out of a lot of the dogs, they have the most. I don't want to say aggressive bond, but they're the dog that bonds. I mean, very strongly with the handler. Is that correct?
I mean, I think any good working dog. I mean, as much time you spend with them, they're gonna bond. I mean, once you get that initial bond, it's hard to explain if you're not a canine handler. It's like having a human person that you've worked with for 5 years every day for 10 to 12 hours. They can read your mind. They can feel your emotion, and it's undescribable, man. So I'll give you an example, man. This is crazy, man. To me, kind of when I first, I guess, understood like how much the dog really reads you. So I stopped an 18-wheeler. The guy was like super suspect, like nervous, not complying, evasive, like the whole time, like not wouldn't talk. So I get him out. I got him in the ditch. I'm trying to, I mean, basically just for my safety right now, trying to make sure he's not trying to kill me. Like, get your hands up, lift your shirt up, turn around. Like, he's not complying to any of that. I eventually pull my gun out because I'm thinking, okay, this is super odd. Like, something is about to happen. So I have him at gunpoint, giving him instructions to lift his shirt up, pull it, turn around. I want to see his waistband. No compliance. And then out of nowhere, my dog shows up at my side, who had crawled through the kennel through the center portion of had a Crown Vic at a time, jumped out of the passenger
Oh my
window,
God.
and now is healing by my side and barking at this guy. And I mean, it took maybe 2 barks, and the guy said, "I got a gun, and it's in my back." And I'm like, "Really, dude? I got a fucking gun pointed at your face this whole time. You don't do nothing, but the dog barks, and now you're complying." Yeah, so to me, man, just that's an example. Just shows like, I never called for the dog. I never even thought he would show up, but
That's got to be the best freaking feeling in the
oh
world,
man,
though.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and bad guys taste like chicken to dogs. No, it tastes like chicken. Hey, do you have an emergency release button for the door? It's like, so if you need help right away.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so we have on the vest there's a popper, which at the time that was a Crown Vic. That was, I mean, I had nothing then, but now I have all the cool stuff.
You have all the cool toys paid for by the cartels and the people violating the law. It's so great when
Thank
they
you very
contribute.
much.
You
And
know,
Christy Schiller.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
her rich friends who like to give lots of money to give dogs away. And Les, the one who thought it was when they had a demonstration. She probably told you this too, but when they did their first fundraiser and they were showing the dogs and doing the dope hides, she thought that they were just tricks. Oh, that's like a party trick. That's so cool. No, it's not a party trick.
Duh.
Yeah.
Duh.
Hey, well, let's before we get into this big seizure, what is the hairiest situation you've had to face with one of your canines? What's one of the toughest situations you were involved in?
Man, I don't know. Harry, I mean, losing the first dog was a little, I didn't really like that. As far as like bad guys, like chasing bad guys, Harry, maybe the second dog. So some guys showed up to this residence and held a family at gunpoint and stole some stuff and took off running. Um, I guess that's not a good example, but we ended up tracking them down. They were hiding in a barn. Really, nothing I can think of that's too crazy.
But
Well, I mean, just going back to that example you showed or you just told us about where your dog just showed up beside your side there, your experience and your training is what kept you alive because, we all know action is quicker than reaction. So if probably think people are probably thinking, well, you thought something was wrong, but you pulled a gun and pointed at that man. It's based on your experience, realizing that if he had gone for his gun the same time you went for yours, who's the quicker draw? I mean, it sounds Western, like some TV show, but the truth is, he could have beat you on the draw and killed you out there on the road that day. So I just want to point out to the listeners, you don't just normally pull people over and stick a gun in their face. There's circumstances that result in that behavior.
Yeah, and it goes. I mean, that sticks out. I mean, I talk about it like it's so casual, but to the normal person, I mean, you got to realize you're stopping multiple cars a day. Like, I don't even know, you're meeting with multiple people a day. Like, so when you stop that one car and that one guy and you get all this adverse different behavior that's not normal, it sticks out. So it's so obvious. And it's the same thing with the dope. I mean, when you're searching cars and searching cars and searching cars, and then you look underneath a Nissan Altima and you see something that you've never seen on a Nissan Altima, then it's the same thing, man. It's that difference sticks out immediately.
hey,
Absolutely.
let's go back to this one with the truck driver real quick. What do you think was the biggest indicator? Was most likely is your voice, right? Your dog heard your voice escalating, telling the guy. Do you think it was? In other words, I'm trying to figure out what triggered the dog because, like you
Right.
said, it knew you so well to get up there and crawl through. I mean, basically break out of the car and come up by your side.
Yeah, it would have to be the voice or the commands, or I mean, I don't know, because to be honest with you, I never one time I forgot I even had a dog. Like, the shit was getting serious. I never looked back. Like, I don't know what it caused him to leave the car and come out, but I would assume that probably the my voice and maybe so.
Hey,
It's like when you're in an armed encounter or you're fighting and you're on the street and backup shows up. That's what I say. It's got to be the best feeling in the world because when you hear those sirens coming, help's on the way.
when you hear that woof, we had a guy one time at
Oh yeah.
another agency, but didn't have a dog, but got on the PA and started barking like a dog. I mean, it's like didn't work. He thought it would work, so no, it didn't slow the guy down at all. But
They're a huge deterrents for sure. I mean, you can pull out a dog and it changes a lot of people's minds real quick.
yeah, one.
Well, and the other thing is one of the most dangerous things a police officer in the United States can do, a uniformed police officer can do, is a traffic stop.
Yep.
Because you have no idea what you're getting into. You're going up there, you don't have your weapon out. I mean, it's just one of the most dangerous things you can ever get involved with. And you're
Traffic
doing it
stops and
multiple times
domestic
every
violence,
freaking
yeah.
day.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables to both of those. I mean, the traffic stop's not only about the car and the people in the car. I mean, you got to worry about getting run over in your position.
Well, those two troopers in Pennsylvania that just got killed, they were helping a homeless guy, a guy, basically a hitchhiker or whatever, off the side of the road. And this car tried to pass their troopers' cars on the right and killed both troopers and the hitchhiker.
And just to give them recognition here, Pennsylvania troopers Martin Mack and Brandon Siska.
Yeah.
And the reason I know that is that the conference I was at this week in
They get
Pennsylvania was
memorial.
dedicated to their memory.
So I had got when I was still on patrol, nighttime patrol. This is I was still I had already got the 2 seizures from the previous county I worked for. So I started working these trucks. I'm like, nobody's working these 18-wheelers, so I'm gonna work these trucks. So in the middle of the night, I was stopping them for simple trap violations, lights being out, ID lights on their cab. And so anyways, what I'm getting to is I stopped an 18-wheeler and I pulled up behind him and he started rolling backwards. And usually it takes just a second for the air brakes to set, but it was abnormally long to where I had to start backing my patrol car up so he doesn't run into the front of my patrol car. Eventually, I'm like, well, the hell with this. I'm not going to keep backing up. I'm just going to pull to the right into the ditch beside him, And when I do, I pulled to the right beside him. Another 18-wheeler came right behind and smashed into the back of him. And they both blew up and the guy burned up. And I mean, just to
Oh
prove your
my
point,
gosh.
a simple traffic stop just turned into a huge explosion, and I'm seconds away from getting smashed. But yeah,
So, dude, when I just asked you what was the
Holy
hairiest thing
cow.
you've been through, you forgot that? You forgot the day? Come on.
I didn't use the dog for anything. I mean, he was hanging out in the back.
Holy cow.
Oh my God. So, both killed. What happened to the drivers?
Yeah, so the driver of the one I stopped ended up getting killed. No, correction. The guy I stopped lived. The guy in the other truck ended up dying because it hit his fuel cell on the side of that trailer and ignited his truck and trailer. Like they shut the interstate down probably like 14 hours. But
Oh my gosh.
Did you find out the reason for the behavior of that truck, or in interviews later, was there any contraband or anything on that truck?
no, there was no contraband on the truck, and I think the driver was actually texting and driving, or on the one that
Okay.
caused the accident.
Yeah, just so folks realize too, a lot of the trucks that are out there on interstates, they're normally the limit's supposed to be 80,000 pounds, but you're talking about a truck, tractor, semi trailer weighing 80,000 pounds, 40 tons, hitting
Mhm.
another truck at 60, 70 miles an hour. It's not going to be a good day.
Dang.
Dang.
It just wasn't your day to go there,
Too.
man.
Well,
Holy cow.
I watch the video still to this day. Sometimes when I come across and I'm like, man, and my whole thing was I'm gonna move to the side, and so when he does stop, because I'm thinking, why does he keep rolling back? I want to see what's going on in the cab, so I pull up beside him, and yeah, it just turned crazy real quick.
holy
That's
cow.
when you get out and thank the good man upstairs.
Oh, I know, absolutely.
God, what a day. Well, anyways, we'll let you go on that one. I said hairy situation, but you're right. Technically, you're correct. Did not involve the dog, but
But still, man, that's
Still.
a pucker factor.
yeah, you talk about just mere seconds away, right? Seconds change people's lives. So, hey, one other thing I wanted to ask you about too. It's about the commands given. A lot of the German dogs that used to come over, some of the military dogs, they would use German commands. How are you taught to give our commands in German? Are they in Belgian? How are commands given to the dogs?
So the first one was German. My second one was German, and the third one's Czech. So you can see I probably fuck them all up. So, but this one now, like I was using some of the German ones on the Czech, but I got it all figured out. But yeah, it's not hard, man. It's not like you got to know German or you got to know Czech. I mean, you're repeatedly telling the dog this word to get this action, and you could tell him anything, and eventually through repetition he picks it up. But yeah, so this one, the one I have now, is Czech.
Give us an example of a command in Czech that you don't fuck up.
Plots, or no, see, I already fucked it up. Laney. So Laney is lay down, and
He just told me to attack instead of lay down. I meant lay down, but instead I said attack. Yeah.
yeah, so Plots and Laney are the same thing, but one's German and one's Czech. So yeah, his Sodney is sit, Zustan is stay, Laney is lay, Stopa search, Apport is like his dope search. The Stopa is like his track search.
How would you say bite Morgan in the ass?
Dersh, like it's just bite. And then I don't know if he'd get his ass, he would get something, If he didn't get his ass, we could detach him and then manually put him where we needed
Manually
him.
reinsert it. Thanks a lot, Randy. I'm going to edit this to make you look really good when we're done with this podcast, pal.
And if that ever happens, we need that on video.
No, we don't. I am armed most of the time, Steve. So,
Okay.
but I would never shoot a police dog.
We had an incident yesterday where a guy was doing recalls. Yesterday was our canine training day. A guy was trying to practice his recalls, which is the decoy stands out in the field, and you send the dog on a bite. About halfway, you recall him back. So he recalled him back, and the dog started targeting another guy. So there's another guy and a trooper, canine trooper, that was out there as well, and they never moved. And he was like, so he ended up getting the dog, giving him corrections, and the dog got his focus back where it needed to be. But the trooper was like, I was going to tase the fuck out of him, man. He was ready. He had his taser out, bro. He was going to tase him.
But that's the danger. That's the other thing too. Is like
Yeah.
you say, it's a working dog, not a family dog. So one real quick thing too. Tell me about when you go to schools and do stuff. What's the protocols for making sure that kids, don't get themselves overextend or that you keep the dog in a safe environment. How do you handle that when you're in a kind of a public facing situation?
Yeah, so no matter where you're at, man, liability is always your responsibility. I mean, you have a bite dog, you know he's a bite dog. It's a dog, it bites, even if he's not a bite dog. And so just going out into public or, like you said, functions, I try to stay away from as many functions as I can. Of course, if somebody specifically asks, then I will do them. But, safety is always our number one. And the distance from the children and making sure that everybody's on the same page when the dog's moving or the kids are moving is always important. But yeah, we definitely don't want to get anybody bit.
Yeah, the dogs don't recognize the uniform as a good guy, do they?
No, the dogs. I mean, uh, they're going to take what's available. What's going to spark their interest.
Well,
I'm thinking the only good guy they see out there is the handler, right?
Yeah, I mean, even sometimes that's questionable. I don't know. He looks at me sometimes. I'm like, hey, bro, like we're on
it's
the
like
same
you might
team.
be like,
Yeah.
fortunately for you, Murph, most of you is a small target, so you're not going to get targeted. So anyway, sorry, what goes around comes around. Hey,
I don't know what you're talking about.
so what I want to do is talk about now a stop that you had a little over a year ago, March 8th, 2021, in Fayette County on I-10 there, milepost 168. Because this was I mean, Murph and I have talked before too about the problem with fentanyl, about the amount of fentanyl that can kill. I mean, the amount, just a small amount, not only can kill people, it can kill the officer, it can kill the dog. And fentanyl has become such a huge issue, especially border issue. We've got so much. The Chinese are shipping precursors and chemicals to Mexico. They're making it there and transporting it across the border. So let's talk about that day and kind of do the setup. I mean, it's like when you work interdiction, what's your normal shift? What do you normally work, or what do you like to work?
Well, I mean, I like to work, 9 to 3, but it just depends on when I can get out there. So I don't have a schedule. Fortunately, the sheriff knows that I hold myself to certain standards, and I'm going to meet those standards throughout the year, and whatever hours it takes to make that, I'm gonna put in the work. So that day, it was a daytime shift. I try to tend to stay to the daytime stuff. I can see a lot more stuff visually that helps. Than the nighttime is more of a guessing game. But yeah, I was just working during the day on that day.
What drew your attention to this Jeep?
It's hard to explain. And for people to understand, and I don't want to put too much information out there because some of the stuff is very specific on what I'm looking for, and it's easy to change. Not that they don't already know, that some of the people know what we
We don't
look
want to
for.
make it easy for people
Yeah,
either,
so
but yeah.
I
Right.
mean, an example would be, this car is registered out of El Paso. You know, I run the registration. I see, through different technology, you can see where the vehicle's been, where it's going, where it's coming from, who owns it, who used to own it, how many times it's traveled, the year model, how much they paid for it, who's insured under it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can look and find out about a vehicle as a law enforcement officer that helps make some of these determinations. And I don't want to put too much out there, but yeah. So the older model vehicle traveling a long distance, it catches my attention on this one.
So
And this is
go ahead.
this time of day is what between 8:30 and 9 a.m. Right?
Man, I don't know. I can't even remember specifically on this one. I mean, I can remember the.
8:47 a.m.
Yeah, we're looking at the articles.
Okay. Yeah. So in the morning time.
And don't
And
worry,
that's
we'll do the research for you. But you just tell us how it goes down.
Yeah. I try to look it up, man. There's unfortunately.
Oh, you've got a few. Fortunately, you've got a lot of seizures out there, but we knew specifically
Yeah.
what we were looking for. So, but the other thing too, it says Sergeant Randy Thuman. So I said Thuman before earlier. It's Thuman. When did you get promoted to sergeant?
Man, I don't even remember. I mean, being a sergeant to me is not. It's not something that I enjoy being a sergeant, but probably 3 or 4 years ago. It's all the same to me, sergeant, deputy. My intentions are all the same. They'll never
All you
change.
care is getting back in that vehicle with your dog, with Colton, going out and
Yeah.
causing havoc.
Yeah. So what had happened was, this is kind of a story that's probably going to take another turn, but so I was getting a lot, and I don't mean, we can come back to the fentanyl seizure, but this has to do with interdiction. when I first started doing interdiction out here, I was getting a lot of stuff. Not a lot of people were successful, or a lot of people were working this part of the interstate. So it was kind of free range, man. And I was really tearing that ass up for a while. One day I got called into the office, and from the road to the chief and the sheriff, and I get in there, and the FBI's there, and they're telling me that they got an informant in with Jalisco cartel out of El Paso, and that they've ordered a hit on me and the dog, and the FBI is telling me that I need to quit law enforcement. So the reason I'm getting into this is because what ended up happening because of all this, after I refused, of course, I'm not going to quit. To me, I'm excited. I'm like, shit, I got somebody's attention. I'm doing something. But so because of that, the county commissioners enabled us to get another spot for me to have backup out there on the interstate, because I'm searching these cars and stuff all by myself. So I got another guy that ended up working with me, and he now does interdiction as well. So I got to be a sergeant, and he works with me, under me, beside me. So that's where the sergeant thing came from.
And actually, before we get into the rest of this too, I forgot to ask you about this because your first two dogs came from the first organization, but your second dog came from Christy and Canine for Cops. So let's set the stage for that real quick before we finish the rest of the stop. How did you find out about Christy? How did you find out about this dog? And how did you go about the process of getting Colt?
So I had the dog before Colt was Lobos, and well, when I initially started Canine, because of the county being such a small county out here in the middle of nowhere, there wasn't really a lot of like real canine guys. You know what I mean? There might be a deputy with some type of dog that he drives around in the car, but as far as legitimately training and keeping up standards and to that level, it wasn't happening out here. So I had to find a group to train with, where it ended up being Harris County Precinct 3, I think. C4, the Precinct 4 guys. Yeah, Houston. So I was training with those guys. And actually, so I don't know if Chrissy, I'm sure she talked about Ted. So Ted is.
He's going to be on the show later.
Okay, so the reason Ted worked for C4 to get to the point where I'm getting to. So Ted was a canine handler with C4. So I was training with Ted and Clayton Marshall and those guys who have now went to the sheriff's office. But so when Christy came along and started this Canine for Cops, and donating a dog for Ted, and I think it was where it all started. I was kind of in that circle of canine handlers. So when she started putting on classes and stuff, the guys were reaching out to me, asking me, hey, you want to come to an e-collar class or a tracking class? So she was letting me attend these classes with my dog that wasn't even her dog, if that makes any sense. And then, she had told me, years before I was ready to retire my dog, that when you get ready to retire your dog, just come talk to me. I'm going to get you a dog. So that's how I ended up getting Colt through Christy.
So your second dog, Lobos, retired.
Yeah, he retired. I worked him, man, until he was about 12, and he set some standards for sure.
Now, and so when a dog retires, where is he? What happens with him?
So he ended up retiring, and he came home. I was able to get him from the county, and he's the dog that bit my daughter, and it's crazy because they became best friends, after he retired. But he ended up getting cancer, and I mean, we treated him. He passed away now, but yeah, he retired to me, and he lived on the ranch for a while. But he got old, and it was his time.
What is the how do you make the decision about when to retire a dog, assuming that there's no physical ailments and stuff? But at a certain age, just like Murph, we got to put him out to pasture, right? So,
yeah. Well, the dog starts displaying. There's signs. You pay attention. You're with that dog every day. You can see him slowing down. Like in Lobos's case, he was sometimes slow to jump into the car, and sometimes it would be so bad that he would sit at the base of the kennel. It would take him a while to really build up the energy to jump into the car. So then, little indicators like that, man, it's time for him to stop.
So now let's take all of that. So now you've got your dog Colt. How long have you had Colt now?
So I've had Colt. Oh man, I want to say 4 years. No, 3 years, because he's about 4. So I got him when he was almost a year, and he's 4 now. So about 3 years.
So, how is Colt's a Belgian? You said right
Yes, Belgian Malinois from Poland
from Poland, who you have to talk to in Czech.
in Czech.
What is
Worldly animal.
so? What is Colt's personality like versus the other two dogs you had?
Man, that's the thing. It's like kids, man. I got 3 kids, and they have totally different personalities, and they're all unique in their own way. And it's the same thing with dogs. I mean, there's certain aspects and stuff that each dog displays that I'm like, man, you're way better than the other dog. But in some instances, the other dog is better in him, and in different areas. But this dog, man, he's a thundercat, man. He's full of energy, and if he's not doing something, like, you better be paying attention, or he better be like kenneled up, because he'll destroy some shit. So he has a lot of drive, and he's always ready to work. And I think you set him up for that. The only thing he knows is work. He's in the car with me. If he gets out of the car, we're doing dope tracking patrol. If you're at home, you go straight to the kennel, and he's sitting there. He sits there all day on Sunday most of the time if we don't get called out, and that drive just builds. And Monday morning, you open that kennel, and he's gone, man. He's ready to work.
Now,
Do you have to get him out on Sundays and let him exercise just to work off some of that energy?
I don't. I leave him in there, man. Let him build that frustration. It's one day a week. He work. I mean, I work him out, man. Every day at lunchtime and at the end of the day, he does sprints. I do ball throws for him, so he gets his workout. That's on top of the other training. Imagine tracking. I'm 225 pounds, and he's 70 pounds, and I'm not running as fast as he is. So he's dragging me the whole time. So he gets his share for sure.
Now, so you called? Did you reached out to Christy and said, "Hey, I'm ready to retire Lobos"? Is that how it goes?
Yeah. So yeah. Well, I mean, by that time we were speaking more frequently. Yeah. So she knew when it was time to retire, and she gave me the option, pretty much, that the sheriff had gave me on the first dog. It's find a dog wherever you want, and let's get him. And so I had looked at some places in California that alder horse. It really drew my attention. I was really focused on going there. And then Christy called me one day, and she's like, "Hey man, go down to Pacesetters here. It's close. It's near Austin, and check out these dogs. They have this really nice dog. I think you'll like him." And I'm like, already have my mindset on this alder horse. They have a big name for their company. They put some badass dogs out. I know some LAPD guys that Christy had brought down that got their dogs from there. I'm like, this is what I want. And then so I go look at the group of dogs, and Colt, man, his drive. I mean, he wasn't even a year old, and the way he was searching, there was some, like, a line of desks and lockers that were in this building, and the way he was searching. At that time, he was just looking for his tug, or for his Kong, but man, the amount of effort that he was putting into smelling all the creases and crevices, and the level changes, I'm like, that's going to be a badass dog. So yeah, so
He's an overachiever.
yeah, so we went with him.
Hey, you know what, Morgan? Too, we keep talking about Christy, and I'm not sure that all of our listeners, if they haven't heard Christy's interview, they might not realize what we're talking about here with Christy and her K9 for Cops. You want to give them a little?
Oh yeah, so
2-minute tutorial.
So episode 42 was Chris Bayless, which just dropped. To episode 43, part 1 and 2 will be Christy, and we got through Christy through Steve and the Speakers Bureau and stuff, and she's very good friends. And so we've been going back and forth for a few months, because we had, before we launched the podcast, we had a bunch of interviews banked. We had 20 or 30 interviews banked, and so we've been playing through those. But we finally got the chance to talk to Christy, and to say she's a hoot is just an understatement. But I got to ask you something, though, Randy, though, speaking of that, if you folks haven't listened, go listen to episode 43, part 1 and 2, because how do you go from being a Playboy playmate to Lucy Lips, the skirt with the dirt, to being a crime victim, to being in charge of K9s for Cops? Come on, admit it. The first time you met this lady with the big Texas blonde hair and everything and the accent, you're going, who the hell is this person and what is she doing here?
Man, Chrissy has been fun since day one, man. That's all I can say. She is the personality to be around. I mean, she makes it fun no matter what. I mean, no matter what the subject is or what she's talking about. Yeah, she's done some really amazing things that, I mean, if she doesn't brag about that, I only find out because of other people talking. Yeah, I couldn't. She's personally to this day done some stuff for my family that, I mean, why this stuff she would never have to do. So I really appreciate and love Christy for everything.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to
I was
say her
just gonna say
husband got to be a strong guy because she's got 300 guys on speed dial, and the husband's
Yeah.
not jealous at all.
And for our listeners, she started when she saw the need for police dogs out there on her own initiative, started Canines for Cops. And so we, take a look at it. It's K, the number 9, S, the number 4, COPS. Take a look at it and learn more about Christy. It's phenomenal what she's doing.
Now, folks, through the magic of editing, you guys don't know that we took a break. Well, we took a break for 2 reasons. Number one, Randy needed a dip. Is that Copenhagen or Skull? What do you got there?
Copenhagen long to, yeah, absolutely.
I do that. The other thing is, I don't have attack dogs, but I have attack cats, and it was a perfect time to feed them because my one cat, Fanny, was going to start eating me if I didn't feed them. So we were able to successfully avert, losing an appendage doing that way. And one last thing before we get in and talk about the traffic stop. Hey, there's another unique thing too that canines did not used to have that they have now, and I want to know if it's that way in Texas. But his status as a peace officer, in other words, you assault a dog, it's the same thing as assaulting a peace officer. What's the status of canines in Texas?
Man, so it's going to be hard for me to be exact on this, but you're correct. I mean, if you cause the death of a dog because of your actions, or directly cause the death of the dog, then there's a charge. I mean, I can't, I don't know exactly what it is. It's not going to be on the same level as assault on a police officer, but I think it is a felony. Matter of fact, the guy that wrecked through the house that I used my first dog to track on, because the dog died during the track of an action he had taken, he was charged with, I forget the exact terminology, but harm to a police animal.
Right.
Good.
No, but that's good. But that's the other thing too. For a long time, they didn't have protections, that you have like that. And speaking of protections too, there was a time too where you couldn't make vests for dogs. It was just other than just the bright vests or whatever. How many of the dogs that you work with are yours? Do you have a stab vest or a canine vest?
Bro, the community has been so supportive, not only here, but I mean, all over the country, man. Even Canada. I mean, I've got donations. These vests are bulletproof vests. They cost anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, and I have 2 of those in my car. And
Wow.
I have a helmet. I mean, some of the people don't even have it yet. So canine helm. They build the helmets for the dogs. They're for the special forces. I don't know how much I can get into it, but they have snap-on muzzles, head protection, eye protection. I mean, Picatinny rails on top for lights and cameras. I mean, the stuff the dogs has access to now, which is well deserved, because most of the time we're putting these dogs in front of us. They're taking the blunt force of whatever's coming. But they have ear protection. I mean, they have everything we have except guns. No guns yet.
Well, not yet, but they have teeth.
They have teeth.
Big teeth.
Yeah.
But there's actually a couple pictures, and they show the special forces guys hopping out of the back of a C-130 or whatever else, and they've got the dog strapped to their chest. It's got the muzzle, it's got the helmet, it's got all that gear. I mean, how awesome is it for a dog who likes to stick their head out of a car that's going 30 or 40 miles an hour to be jumping out of a C-130 going, 150, 60 miles an hour? Let's talk about hanging your tongue out.
For me, that stuff's always cool. As a canine handler, I'm always like, man, those guys get to jump out of planes. But so years ago, I'll back up on the story, but I did a traffic stop. This is when liquid meth was pretty much unheard of, at least out here. Maybe you guys were seeing it in Mexico, but I stopped a Ford F-250 diesel truck. And the guy was coming from Rio Grande City, going to Houston, story all jacked up. This is in between 2 dogs. So I had lost the first dog and hadn't had the second dog yet. Gas tank tooled, all the indicators are there. Take it to the shop, drop the tank. I'm like, there's going to be dope in here. Spill shit all over me, all over my pants, all over my shirt. Nothing in there. Put it all back together. Let him go. And then probably like 20 minutes later, the outline of my pants start drying and it starts crystallizing. And then I look on the ground and like all the shit's crystallizing on the ground. it doesn't happen immediately because of the amount of liquid that's on the ground. So long story short, this dude has fucking a fuel tank full of liquid meth, and I just turned him loose down the interstate. So I let him go, and DPS ends up stopping him, and then we get in a big. So at that time, my buddy that I keep referring to, man, we've been friends since third grade. He's in Austin County, but he's attached now as a TFO to DEA Major Drug Squad out of Houston. So he's been working up there a couple years, and I've been giving him all my seizures. Every time I get a seizure, it goes to his group. So Nick Wilson, HPD sergeant's the GS at the time, and so DPS tries to take the seizure, and DEA's like, "No, man, that's our guy," but not really. On paper, I wasn't their guy. So from that time forward, I became a TFO, and I've been working with different DEA groups, and I'm getting to all this too because now we have Army Counter Drug Intelligence in our group, and we have access to helicopters, and so we get to use I get the dog. We're rappelling out of helicopters, and he just gets to do all kind of fun stuff, man.
So you're a sworn TFO with DEA?
Yes, sir. Right now I'm with D25 as an enforcement group. I was with Major Drug Squad for a while, and then one of our buddies split off and became a GS. And
For our listeners, once as a sworn task force officer, that's what TFO stands for. As a sworn task force officer, that gives Randy federal jurisdiction in addition to his state and county and local jurisdiction. So you got a lot more authority than any of the feds do.
yeah, so yeah, I mean, I applied for DEA myself in 2012, and really was going to make the jump, and I was told, look, man, DEA is not where you need to be, man. You'll be a caged lion. So just but anyways, I stayed where I'm at, and it's fun because I can take a traffic stop, a cold traffic stop, which means no information. I stop a car, and I'll just use an example. I stopped a car that had a bunch of wooden chalk blocks on the back of it. Well, it ended up being probably 30, 40 kilos of heroin. So I can take the traffic stop from my jurisdiction as a county deputy, and then roll it into me being a TFO with DEA, take that guy, park my car, get in with him, take it to DEA, jump through all the hoops you got to jump through there, but do a controlled delivery and take down the bad guy in Houston. So there's instances that I get to do, a little bit more than just a traffic stop, which makes it a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. And talk about jumping over DEA. I love this saying: you find a job you like, you'll never work a day in your life.
I absolutely
Randy,
agree.
I mean, just talking to you on the phone and then having you on the interview here for a little while, you can tell you're loving what you're doing, man. So don't,
I don't know.
love to
I'm
have
a
you in
little
DEA,
vague.
but
He doesn't seem like he could care less about getting dope off the highway, working with the dog. I don't know, Randy. You just got to, a little bit more energy to match your dog, okay? Pretend that you're Colt right now, and let's get this thing going.
I tell you what, you're right where you need to be, man.
Yeah, my wife, man, I love her to death. She deals with a lot of stuff, as all law enforcement wives do. But I think if I didn't live an hour from the interstate, that we would have some real issues, because I don't know if I could ever pull off that road. But yeah, I've been ate up with it since day one, man.
Life's good.
Well, let's get back to what we were originally going to is your traffic stop, March 8th, 2021, 8:47 p.m., milepost 168 on Interstate 10. Interstate 10 obviously is a huge drug corridor. You've gotten some information to stop these folks. So let's talk about you're going from the stop, you make the approach. Just kind of take us from there, walk us through the story.
Yeah, so stop the car, simple traffic violation. Meet with the registered owner and the passenger. They're coming from El Paso, going to visit family in Houston.
So the registered owner is in the vehicle.
I'd have to read through the report to be exactly sure, but so they lie about their travel. So one of the things I always ask is, they tell me they're coming from El Paso. Were you coming from El Paso, or are you coming from Mexico? Did you cross? So they lie. They say they didn't cross, but really I know because Diesel, which is the same databases, Dice, Darts, I can see that they crossed the POE, the bridge, the international
The port
bridge.
of entry. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So they crossed that this morning. So they're lying about that. She's nervous. She's yawning. She's showing displaying all different kinds of indicators. So I asked for consent to search, and it's one of those things like I talked about earlier, man. When you search, I think that was a Jeep Liberty or a Jeep Laredo, but when you search a lot of Jeep Laredos or a lot of Jeep Liberties, the moment I looked underneath the vehicle, I knew it had a compartment in the rear deck, which is the rear cargo area of the SUV.
Now, did you know
Mhm.
it had? Did you know that? Was it looking under it before you opened up the tailgate, or was it after opening the tailgate you located it?
It was a little bit of both. So I opened up the rear hatch, and I could see some tooling on some of the bolts that would indicate that they had been deeper underneath the paneling. And as soon as I looked underneath the vehicle, I mean, it's so obvious, man. A lot of people put so much stress into interdiction, and some of these compartments are good. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, some of them, most of them are so obvious, man. I looked underneath and immediately knew that it had compartment in it.
Yeah, you get some of those one where you're looking and they've used Bondo and it's freshly painted and it's like sticking out, from everything else. And I'll tell you what, there's several series on TV where they show the Customs and Border Patrol and other people, Homeland Security investigations work in these cases. But before we get into the rest of the story, let's take two tracks here because I used to do the same thing too. And I'll tell you, one of the funniest stories I heard about and actually saw the videotape was a Texas DPS guy and had a guy stopped on the side of the road and basically talking to him, like the big Texas DPS. Now, let me ask you something, son. Are you doing anything here that's illegal, would be considered illegal in the great state of Texas? No, sir. Are you doing this? And he says, well, would you have any objection if I searched your car? And this guy by that time was so nervous, he passed out. You see him on the dash cam of the car, falls down into the ditch. And he goes, I'll take that as a yes. I mean, some people get so nervous, right? But there's two approaches. One is when they give you consent and you're allowed to search, and then something indicates you can bring the dog up there now, and then you get the hit. The other one is when they consent, but as you start to search, they revoke their consent. And then there's another one where they don't give you any consent at all, but you have enough reasonable suspicion to hold the vehicle there. They might be able to go, but you can hold the vehicle. So walk us through how you approach some of those things. Like these folks, when you said they gave you consent, did they give you consent or did they revoke it or withdraw it at any point?
Yeah, so a majority of these, man, that I get, almost 99% of them, man, they're giving me consent all day long. I mean, they've dealt with law enforcement. Most of them are super comfortable, and you can't even get the nervous behavior off of them. But yeah, I think they believe because they beat Border Patrol, they beat the dogs at the checkpoint, they beat other officers. Maybe they've been stopped by a traffic cop on the way to where they're being stopped now. They gain some type of confidence in the concealment, and they're like, "Yeah, go ahead and search it, man." So majority of them are consent. I run the dog anyway. The federal prosecutors they like to see the amount of time it takes from the traffic stop to the dog alert. I guess it helps in their case. If they're denied consent, if I get denied consent, I run the dog, and you know, I like to feel that a majority of the time, if it's there, he's giving me a positive indication and alert, and I can find it that way. So the other portion you kind of touched on was giving consent and then withdrawing the consent in the middle of the search. So that actually happened with the liquid meth on the fuel on the diesel truck I was talking about earlier. The guy had given me consent, and when I dropped his tank, he refused the consent. Remember, I didn't have a dog at this time, but the reasonable suspicion, the little pieces, in my mind at that point, I had built the reasonable suspicion was so much that had developed into probable cause, and so I continued to search, and it all worked out.
Well, so, and you just mentioned, and just so for clarification, I guess, more than anything else, you don't need to consent to walk a dog around the exterior of a car, right? That's public space.
Absolutely. So it gets a little touchy. I mean, you can't prolong the traffic stop from your normal traffic duties, but yeah, it's not hard to work the dog in there. I mean, if you made a traffic stop and you were doing your stuff, I could pull up right behind you and just run the dog for no reason. I mean, that's not prolonging the traffic stop. It's yeah, that's public air. It's not a probable cause is not needed to run the dog. Just reasonable suspicion usually.
Well, after Murph moved to
And
Florida and he hadn't taken a bath in like 5 days, I mean, if you ran your dog by him, I'm surprised he'd get a hit. So,
they'd probably pass out. But and that used to amaze me. It sounds. I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking this is unbelievable that somebody would knowingly have dope or drug proceeds in their vehicle and give consent. And when I was a new DE agent in Miami, we would do controlled deliveries and watch. In one case, we watched the controlled delivery of 300 kilos into a house. We sat on it for a couple of days. They start parceling it out, starting to distribute the cocaine. We're doing traffic stops. So finally, we just go up and ask for consent search. We know 300 kilos in there. What we found was the guy had another 200 kilos in the house already, gave us consent thinking we're not going to see, the remaining 400 kilos, whatever it was left in the house. I guess he thought we were stupid or blind, and he was part of that Santeria religion. He thought that
he was
those
protected by
voodoo
the
gods.
Well, look,
the voodoo gods were going to make us blind.
Well, that's that cash seizure that I got. I got one back actually in 1990, 202,000, and the guy let me have consent to search the trunk of his car, and then also in the trunk of his car was a frickin' briefcase that had plans for a methamphetamine laboratory. So you talk about time. I mean, but it's amazing what people will do if you just ask for. And the way I used to phrase it too, people always want to say no, so I made no say yes instead of saying, "Can I search your car?" and they go no. I say, hey, understanding, the war on drugs, and you certainly don't support, the importation of it. Would you have any objection if I searched your car? No. Thank you very much. No means yes. Step out. Be just a couple minutes. We'll do stuff. So a lot of this is psychology, but I like what you were getting at though, the two, because the other thing too is that just so that people don't get twisted sideways, the law allows, there's this thing that went back called the Carroll Doctrine, and it actually came from a 1925 case involving the search of an automobile for moonshine whiskey. The Supreme Court said, hey, there is a lesser expectation of privacy in a public motor vehicle. You don't need a warrant to search a car, when it's stopped out there on the public roadway. So a lot of times, if you've got now reasonable suspicion stop goes to probable cause to search, you don't need a warrant. Now, there's some exceptions, but people forget this. Actually, the law on that went back now almost 100 years, talking about defining how you can search a motor vehicle. But in this case, they're stopped there. You've got them lawfully stopped. They're giving you consent. So walk us through. Now you see this container. This concealment that's going on. At what point do you pull out the dog?
So I pull him out at that point and run him on the vehicle. But before I start messing with a bunch of stuff, a lot just for the training for the dog. Even though I know it's there, I want the dog to find that stuff on his own and be exposed, with least amount of tampering to the way that the air is flowing through the compartment as I can do, So, I run the dog on the compartment and he alerts to the compartment. At that time, I'm thinking, fentanyl's not, man, to get a fentanyl seizure out here, especially kilos of fentanyl, it's not common. It's becoming more common, but it's kind of one of the top tier drugs, man. If you get some fentanyl, man, you really knock something out. So I drill the compartment from underneath. I've only gotten fentanyl a couple times at this point.
Now, when you say you drill the compartment, let people know what you're doing.
I got a DeWalt drill with a drill bit on it, and I just want to hit dope and show that I got dope so I can take the car and take it to the office and do everything I need to do as far as accessing the compartment safely instead of on the side of the road.
And while you're doing this, where are the occupants of the car?
They're standing in the ditch.
Are they cuffed up?
After I see the compartment, yeah, they're both detained.
Now,
okay.
You talked about getting, the county got another position because of the threats from the cartel. The FBI came in and stated the obvious to you that, hey, cartel guys want to come get you. But did you have backup that day, or are you just working solo?
So I had backup. Man, I can't remember if my partner was out that day. Usually he's out. I would say he probably showed up. I'll call him, when I find something. Hey, can you come check out with me? And the reason, besides the FBI threat or whatever they had at that time, there was other agencies at the border that had found pictures of me accessing cars or arresting people on the eastbound side that were taken from the westbound side. A lot of these vehicles, they'll have vehicles that are traveling. Scout cars or decoy cars, trying to get you to target them. And so apparently one of those guys had flipped and took a picture of me, and one of those pictures turned up. So you never know, man. When you're out with these people, you never know if there's another car that's with the vehicle. Is it a protection car? Is it a decoy? Is it, you don't know who these people are with. So I try to get somebody, as soon as I know I have something, to get my partner out there to stand by.
Do you know how much the contract was on you?
So I think, man, the FBI is the FBI, bro. And I love the guy.
There is an understatement of the year right there.
That's the commonality amongst all law enforcement in the United States.
We love them, but they're like your brother or sister you love to hate.
Yeah. So
exactly.
I never got a specific number on the contract. What it was was I think I pissed off one of the higher guys that was in the Houston area for the Halasco cartel. So I had taken several money seizures that, after learning the whole story, ended up being that same cartel guy's proceeds. So I probably took, man, probably $600,000 or $800,000 off of him, out of multiple vans, and then I ended up hitting his brother in an 18-wheeler that had like 50 keys of meth in the diesel tank, and it was his brother. So it wasn't long after that the informant was in the truck with him when he called Mexico trying to get authorization to do this hit. So I don't know. I would suspect it's bad for business, and he was probably more just pissed off because it was family and his money that got taken. But yeah, there was no number that was ever said.
Yeah, but it's still not something you take lightly, is it?
No, so I mean, and the sheriff really took, to me, people always say, why are they posting your picture in the news, or why are they doing press releases? Like, these people are going to know. But what a lot of people don't understand is these people already know, man. They get your reports. These lawyers are criminals themselves. They pull the reports. They know, who you are, and everything that happened on that traffic stop. I mean, you can Google my name and see where I live, but yeah, so they had surveillance on my house for quite a bit of time for the local PD that worked in the city I live, and then there were certain stipulations that were taken at work, as far as giving out my information or work schedule or phone calls and stuff, that there were some rules, but I haven't heard anything since then about it.
Well, that's because Murph and I are on the case now. So you guys out there,
Jeez.
pay attention. After we've had our coffee in our bathroom break, we'll be right with you.
I think what you're talking to a lot when you're talking about getting consent and stuff is the way you talk to people, man. I learned, so a couple things you had said, these guys give you consent. And when I first started, man, I would think, oh, well, this dude just gave me consent. He obviously doesn't have anything in the car, and I'd cut him loose, being a young officer. I'm like, shit, if I had something in my car, I'd be like, no. So I learned quick that that's not the case at all. And I also learned that talking to people like they're people, man, it goes a long way. Now, if you go up there and you start reciting the traffic code to these guys and being a dick, man, you're going to get nowhere.
Exactly. You treat people with the amount of respect that they treat you with, is the way I look
and
at
that
it.
good old Texas, that good old Texas drawl. Hey, y'all, how you doing? Just pass. I see you passing through our state. I just want to have a quick chat with you. And next thing you know, they're in handcuffs, and Colt has got another seizure with you.
And a lot of these people, man, are I mean, you like to put a face on drugs as gangs and cartel and these real bad people, but I mean, out of all honesty, 90% of people that are trafficking drugs, man, they're in it to make a living, to support their family. They have no work, and this is easy money that they thought to take advantage of, and then once they do it, man, they're trapped. They're trapped. The cartel has them trapped in the game.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the article here, and it shows that the driver was an 18-year-old female, and the passenger was a 20-year-old male.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they didn't have tats all over their face like MS-13 does and stuff like that.
Yeah, rarely. I would say, I mean, rarely have I ever came across somebody I suspected to be like a true cartel member or gang member. Most of these people and I learned, and when I'm looking for these cars, you're looking for normal people, normal dressed people.
I got to tell you, some of our guys up on interstate that started doing interdictions and stuff, grandmas and grandpas driving travel homes, people with babies
RVs.
and wanting to, they had it down to a science too, it's the whiny kids, cry kids. It's all part of the thing to get you. I mean, they would try multiple different ways. And like I said, the funny thing too is it's amazing how much these dopers know, but it's amazing how little they know too, because unlike you, when they had too much evidence, when the state patrol would see stuff, they'd get DA involved usually, and it would go to their secure facilities. One of our guys that made a huge stop up there, somebody broke into the division or the field headquarters, the field office for them. Well, most of these field offices, when you're up there working interstate, when you're not at a division headquarters or some little DOT building, a shitty 3-room little office, you're not going to put 300 kilos of cocaine seized out of a truck, tractor, semi-trailer in a little DOT building, but yet they show up one morning and what happened? Somebody had broken in looking for the dope.
Yeah, so I had an 18-wheeler not long ago. The guy, I really don't think he knew what he was doing, but when he told me the story, I basically told him, dude, if I told you the same story you just told me, you would want to search your own truck. I mean, he was from Houston. He had got this job on eBay where he was going to drive an 18-wheeler for like
On
500 bucks
eBay?
on
Wait a
eBay.
minute, eBay?
I-
Oh my God.
Yeah, eBay or Craigslist, maybe it was
Craigslist,
Yeah.
Craigslist.
So he's going to drive this 18-wheeler from Laredo to Houston. He's from Houston, so the guy pays for a bus ticket from Houston to Laredo. When he gets to Laredo off the bus, that same guy's waiting for him and puts him in an 18-wheeler. I mean, long story short, I stop him. The dog alerts to the hub, the rear hub on the 18-wheeler. It's like 25 keys of cocaine, but he never had a clue, bro. He never had it. I really don't think he had a clue what was in there.
Now, was this guy to have a commercial driver's license, what they call a CDL?
Yeah, absolutely.
See, and that's what we were saying
Unbelievable,
earlier, I
dude.
think, in the pre-call. Sometimes you get these folks, they have no idea what it is they're doing. They just know they're driving. They probably have an idea, but that's why you don't get a lot of good intelligence out of some of these highway stops, because these people have no idea. Unless you can do a controlled delivery, unless you can actually take it to the destination, these folks are about as clueless, as a DEA agent
Yeah.
on Friday at 4:00 after a few beers.
Yeah, they're definitely limited to the knowledge of what they're doing. I mean, even if they do want to cooperate, they can only give a phone number because that's all they have. They're going to meet the
When they
guy
get there.
at
Yeah.
the Lowe's parking lot in Houston, and that's all they know.
Yeah. Hey, so go back to where you drilled that compartment on there. Now we all know that fentanyl. You say you want
Yeah.
to hit drugs, right?
Fentanyl.
And fentanyl is so dangerous. How do you protect yourself? I mean, if you hit dope and all of a sudden fentanyl drops out on your drill bit, there's the possibility that it could get on your hands and be absorbed through the pores of your skin. So how do you protect yourself?
Honestly, I'm not expecting fentanyl, and up to that point, until that point, that's not something that I thought I was going to be encountering. So there was really no protective measures. I mean, if you think about it, it's pretty dumb because I'm laying on my back drilling something that's above my head, and I hit white powder, and I'm like, boom, I got you. It's cocaine, And I go test it for cocaine, and I don't get anything. And I didn't have no fentanyl test kits at the time, so I take it back to the office, and then once I get the kilos out of the compartment, I can tell that it's not a kilo of cocaine just because the size and shape of it. And then from that point, I took all the protective measures to access it, which a lot of people suggest now these days, man, that if you find dope, you don't even mess with it. You send it to the lab. But out here, man, it's I like to know what I have so I can at least get the charges right.
There are, and we'll talk offline. There's equipment out there now. It's rather expensive, but there's equipment that you can use in the field that you could carry in your cruiser that will identify what you have.
That electronic stuff.
And after we finish, I'll give you some contact information.
And that's the great thing when you watch some of these series like on Hulu and Netflix, when they show the Border Patrol, they've got all the new technology. It's no more those searchy labs, where you have to do the field test kits and break the ampules. You just stick that probe in there. It uses laser basically, and it identifies if you've got fentanyl, carfentanil, cocaine, whatever it is. It's a hell of a lot safer than I mean, God bless you, but man, dude, laying underneath the vehicle, drilling a hole, going, "What's that white powder? Oh shit! Somebody better call an ambulance."
Well, actually, I had an incident. It was a Ford Expedition one time, it has that rear air conditioning unit and the side quarter panels in the back, and so I could tell that the air conditioning unit in the back had been tampered with. And cops, man, we're trying to take shortcuts. So I don't want to take all the goddamn bolts out to look inside this thing. So I got my knife, right, and a screwdriver, and I'm prying the pieces apart, and I see a chrome silver package, and I'm like, okay, that's a bundle. And I'm laying down. Of course, you're looking, your mouth's open because you're like focusing so much. Well, it ended up being like a wine bag, right? And I popped it. It was full of liquid meth, and it's all over my fucking face and, bro, all over my shirt. Yeah, so I had to call EMS on that one. But luckily,
did you have a bad trip because of that? I mean, I'm not being funny. I mean, did anything physically happen or happen to you medically?
No, I was fortunately. I mean, I knew immediately that it was liquid meth, and I washed my face, and nothing ever came of it. But
do you guys carry Narcans in your car?
we do, yeah.
Narcan
So
kits?
I have plenty of Narcan now for the dog and myself.
Yes, that's the benefit of having a partner out there. And just in case you do absorb, it can save your ass.
Yeah, because the fentanyl, like you said, man. Luckily I've never been exposed to it, but I mean, from reading articles and
Oh,
and
it can be deadly. It doesn't take much. In fact, if you
terrible.
want to know what it's like, go back episode 40. Bill Sarukas, Deputy U.S. Marshal, the guy that actually helped identify the snipers, the DC snipers. When he was working undercover, he was licking the envelope to put in some LSD blotter acid and got LSD. He had a bad trip. He went on an acid trip he didn't realize. Oh, hey, well,
Mm.
so work through that. So what's the process once you get that in there? Once you got that, what do you do with the driver and passenger?
so they're once I found the compartment and hit the substance, then they're transported to jail by patrol. And then I wait for the record and we go to the jail and then I access the compartment. This one was a little, the compartment was shitty, but it was a little more sophisticated. It was on some actuators. So trying to figure out the process with the wiring and stuff, finally get the compartment open because I'm trying to do it the right way because I do take a little bit of pride in finding this cool compartment that I don't want to just tear it up, maybe use it for some training and stuff like that later on. But yeah, so I access.
Can you go into details about how that was? Can you tell us about how that one was accessed?
So I never figured out what
The combination.
the combination was. So what we do now is we just found the hot wires that go to the actuators and jump them off with a battery that makes the actuators function and opens the compartment.
It could be, and you know better than I do, but it could be one of those things where you got to have the car in park, the radio has to be on, you push the cigarette lighter in, and the heat
Murph,
has
you've
to be
just
on a
dated
certain
yourself.
setting.
They don't have cigarette lighters in cars anymore.
So one of
That's true.
the compartments I got. I have two stories for your compartment that you. So it was a cigarette lighter. The rear console or the center console from the rear had the cigarette lighter. You opened the cigarette lighter and stuck your finger all the way back, and there was a button, and that popped the
Oh,
that popped the
jeez.
radio out. But one of the compartments, yeah, you never figure them out. So one of the guys I got probably more recently. I don't know. He had 20 or 30 keys in a dash compartment behind the speedometers and stuff. But yeah, he showed me how to access the thing, man. And it was the parking brake. The parking brake, you had to put the steering wheel all the way down. And then it was the rear back window. You had to put your foot on the brake, the parking brake, and the rear back window, and that it was on a little actuator that the speedometer kilometer thing came out, and it was access to the compartment back there. Yeah, but you never really figure it out unless they tell you.
Pretty ingenious.
Well, it is. And back in the days, like I said, one of our guys that was doing interdiction couldn't figure out why there was just this one copper penny sitting like in the ashtray. Couldn't figure it out until they figured it out. In the old days, what they had was two rivets that were on like the air conditioner vent and stuff. So you took the penny and touched the rivets together, which closed the circuit, which then popped open
Hmm.
the trunk, in the back. But I think it was the Ohio State Patrol came up with this. I think it was called a bypass tool. It's basically like an electronic tool. No matter what it was, you could scan down. It would find the servos, the actuators, and it could actually activate those things with some kind of a tool. But anytime you come up with a tool, then there's a counter tool. Then there's the counter tool.
Yeah.
They keep figuring out ways to do this. But let's focus in on this. What was the result of what you book them in? What happened? What I'm really interested in is the way the fentanyl was packaged and that design on there, because that's very unique. It almost looks like a horseshoe with flare out on each end. It almost looks like a happy seahorse. Almost looks like it's a child's toy. So
Yeah.
talk about getting into that and pulling the dope out. At what point did you know you had fentanyl?
So when it didn't test positive for cocaine, then I was pretty certain that and it didn't test positive for meth. Once I actually opened it up, like I suited up in the full PPP gear, mask, gloves, suit, and I took my time and cut it open. Once I could see the texture of what the substance was, then I kind of figured it was going to be fentanyl because I had gotten one previous fentanyl seizure prior to that. Then fentanyl. I turned it over to. So I'm a TFO with DEA, but I'm also with Westside HIDA is a different group that I'm also with, and I turned it over to those guys, and they took it to the DEA lab, and it was all secured and tested. And
Were they able to work the case back at all?
man, I don't think so. I don't think anything came of that.
Just when you read through the article and then when you look at the amount of dope and what it was and what it could turn into, it was $100 million worth of fentanyl. Is what the street value would have been.
Yeah, so the street value I always put it down as street value. So when I do street value, in my mind, I went off an article that was written by like the New York Times, like or I think that's what it was, that explained the amount of fentanyl powder it took to make however many thousands of fentanyl pills that was equal to whatever dollar amount. I mean, I don't know. Wholesale, obviously, they're probably not paying $100 million. Even, when I get cocaine, you get 1 kilo of cocaine, they might pay $20,000 for it. But street level, I mean, if you do $100 a gram, that's $100,000.
When if you step on it once or twice and cut it,
And I don't even add that in there because I don't want to even confuse people more. But yeah, if you take 1 kilo of cocaine, like more than likely that's going to end up being 3 kilos of cocaine once it's stepped on and sold. But yeah,
Right, and you're looking at $100 a gram, and there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram, so now you got 3,000 times 100.
yeah,
That's how the big bucks are made. I
and
mean,
that's why they can
how
pay
it
the big
works.
money. That's when we're talking to George Young, episode 2, and how much he was making for the kilos he transported and how much they were, paying per trip. That's why it was easy for these traffickers to throw away a car or throw away a plane. It was just a cost
Mhm.
of doing business. It was no different than fueling up a car. Well, now if you fuel up a car, if you guys have fueled up lately, I don't want to throw a car away, man. That gas is worth more than my car is right now.
If I give it away, it's not gonna have any gas
Yeah,
in it.
that's right. And I'm running that son of a bitch. Well, as I may have mentioned, I'm selling my 2000 Camaro Super Sport. So if I have somebody who's pretty close to doing it, yeah, I'm siphoning the gas out of that puppy. I'm sorry, pal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, so Randy, so we all know that how deadly fentanyl is, and and the professionals say that it could be as little as 3 grains. If you look at a grain of salt, how big that is, so 3 grains of fentanyl could cause an overdose. Did you ever get an indicator of how many people could potentially be killed from those 5 bricks of fentanyl you
I
seized that day?
did, man. And I don't know if it was in that article, they may have put that in there, but it was an astronomical amount of people that could have died from that exposure to that amount of fentanyl.
It's horrible, and I apologize. I should have looked that
I
up
think it
before I
was
even
three
asked you that
times the
question.
population of Texas.
Yeah, it's something crazy, man, and all that. The big aspect of it, and a lot of people, man, I get frustrated, or I used to get frustrated with the prosecution when it comes to like federal prosecution and stuff like that. Like some of these guys aren't getting what I think they deserve, but in the grand scheme of things, man, that amount was taken off the street that day, and surely it saved somebody's life.
Absolutely, absolutely doing God's work out there, brother.
Hey, so in terms of that, I know one of the things Christy is big about is keeping stats on things, keeping metrics, keeping stats on the dog. With you now and Colt now, what do your stats look like that you can recall? I know you don't remember what happened yesterday, but toss me a bone here, as they say in dog talk.
Man, I don't know. I get asked that question a lot, so I've been kind of keeping track because of the amount. So I got Colt. I've had him for several years, 3 years. I mean, it's really a lot, man. I don't know. I can't even put a number on it. I mean, we don't get. I mean, I know some of the guys y'all interviewed before, and they're getting thousands of kilos at a time. But I mean, I might get anywhere from 5 to 100 kilos of anything at any given time. So that adds up. And then on the money, I mean, I remember Colt's for his first money seizure was only a few months after I had got him on the street, and it was like $634,000 and some cookies in an 18 wheeler. So just that alone, it's pretty significant. He's done a lot of work.
So in an average month, just average it out like for a month. How much what do you get, kind of per month if you're looking at it in terms of whether it's like coke or meth, or fentanyl now or cash, kind of what's your distribution?
So it varies, man. And here lately has been really frustrating for me because they're pushing a lot of illegals. It's really easy to push illegals and make money that way. I mean, obviously the Gulf cartel.
The human trafficking is a ton of money for these guys.
Yeah, and the way our system's set up, man. It's easy for them to get away with that. So Nuevo Laredo was like a huge source for what I deal with most of the time. It's coming from that portion of Mexico. They arrested that Juan Trevino Chavez not long ago, and there've been some fighting over there for territory. So I guess what I'm getting at is, man, it could vary. It could be five or six dope seizures a month, and maybe 2 or 3 money seizures. Typically, I have the dog. I work the eastbound side. I work the dope side. My partner, he works the westbound side, money and guns. So he's been seeing a lot of, and I just got some money the other day too for human trafficking. And like I said, man, that's anywhere from 20 to 60 grand. When the dope money's been coming, man, you could get anywhere from 100 to 600. It varies.
So, in terms of when you get let's talk about real quick when you get a money seizure. What's the process on a money seizure? In other words, how much of that stays local? How much of that goes to the state? What's it like? You say it's tricky. Everybody wants to, it's like the mafia. Everybody wants to get their get. I pay you, you pay him. I almost feel like I'm
Yeah.
paying John Gotti here at some point. But
It is.
yeah, so if you seize $1 million, how does it get split up?
So it's frustrating to me, man, and it's kind of why, like I said, I try to stay away from the money. So there's different stops. So if it's a stop that say it involves my group, my DEA group, or another DEA group that have multiple TFOs from multiple agencies, then it's going to get split amongst everybody in the group. A cold stop is going to stay here. Unfortunately, our county attorney has made an agreement with the previous sheriff before mine got here where they're taking 50%. That is astronomically high. So she's getting 50% of everything right off the bat. And she's not willing to negotiate that, which I understand because it's more money for her. But so yeah, typically we would agree on a split. She's been favorable sometimes to give me a little bit more and take a little bit less, but it would go to training and equipment for the sheriff's office, the portion that we did receive, which means we can get patrol cars, uniforms, guns, training for officers, stuff that really a small agency like ourselves doesn't have access to without those seizure funds. The rest would go to her. If you file it federally, they're probably going to take 10%, but I'll probably be retired before the case is actually settled. That it's a slower system. It's a bigger wheel. It turns a lot slower. So federally, you're waiting a little bit longer.
What I like about we're asking you for stats. I kind of like the fact that you don't have cumulative stats because you're not trying to toot your own damn horn here. You're out doing a job that needs to be done. You're serving the taxpayers in the county where you work and the citizens of Texas as well as the United States. You're protecting human lives. And it's not like you're wearing a badge of honor that, oh yeah, I seized 1,000 kilos of coke or I've seized $100 million. It's you're just out doing your job. To me, that's fantastic that you look at it that way.
And I like I said, I love this job, and by no means am I the best interdiction guy in the state. I mean, there's some guys doing some astronomical things, and I try to stay in that group and network with those guys and learn as much as possible. As far as stats for Christy, on her behalf, every time I get a seizure, I just send her, hey, this is what I got, and she probably has more accurate stats than I have. But I mean, I'll write down a date and amount and a case number just so I can reference it back when I go back to looking through all the stuff I've gotten over a year if somebody's specifically asking about one thing.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Christie's reason; she's looking for donors, and she can show.
Yep.
You want to show people who are willing to give their hard-earned money the results of their donations. I understand completely why she does it, but it's completely different because you're a public servant, which for me is a badge of honor, and you're out there serving the public, man. I just take my freaking hat off to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I do. The sheriff, he publicizes the seizures as well, and I think it's for the same reason, just to let the community know that hey guys, we're out here and we're working and we're making things happen. And like I said, I could do none of this without the support of my sheriff. I mean, it takes a special guy to cut somebody like me off leash and do what I do.
Well, that or
Yep.
Colt, man, either one of you being off leash is a dangerous thing for the bad guy. By the way, let's give your sheriff a shout out. Tell us about your sheriff.
Yeah, so Sheriff Keith Korinek, he's my sheriff here in Fayette County. He's had a long career in law enforcement, and he's man, absolute best guy to work for, man.
And that was, guys, we didn't pay, and the sheriff didn't pay us to ask that question. So this is from the heart. So
I'm going to tell you how good the sheriff is, man. So some of these other agencies, you start getting like a district attorney's office that has interdiction officers where they can kind of stipulate their salaries, where they get paid a significantly amount more than I do. So I get paid. I don't get paid anything special because I get more dope or because I'm a canine officer or because I'm doing interdiction. So the sheriffs had even brought it to commissioner's court that I get a pay raise using our own proceeds that we've got, which is can be done, through interdiction efforts. But he went, to battle for me with the commissioners. Unfortunately, it was turned down. But I mean, he was proposing that I get, a significant raise.
And that's a tough thing. You think about it too. It's a tough thing to have a conversation about because you don't want people to get the perception is that the only reason you're doing it out there. It's like I told somebody one time, I said, look, you do not want, because they thought troopers would make commissions off tickets. Like we got to keep certain percentage of it. Now everything goes into the general fund. You do not want me making money off of a ticket because, dude, I would not stop writing tickets until I ran out of tickets or I ran out of ink. And that's a bad day for you and a good day for me. So we don't get paid on commission. But on the other hand, though, you think that, hey, look, for the risks you take and everything else, if the public only knew how little money people like you got paid to do this type of work, they would want you to have a pay raise. But I realize the county commission doesn't want to make it look like, hey, we're just, we're lining. But I'm telling you, they've got to come up with a solution for guys like you because you still got to feed a family. You take risks these county commissioners don't take.
Absolutely. And I think, not just for me. I mean, we could use that money. There's no way I could do what I do if it wasn't for patrol doing what they do. Somebody has to take those calls and answer to the public needs and put up cows and stuff like that. And if they weren't doing that person would be me. And the money that was in that account, he even proposed that it, be spread throughout the whole department, which I'm totally good with, man, because without the support of just the regular patrol officers or the investigators that are doing a completely different job, man, I wouldn't get to do what I do.
Yeah, and that's being part of a team. It's
Yeah.
as simple as
Yeah,
that.
they take the same risk, that I take, maybe different situations, but the risk is always there.
Wait a minute. You say different situations. You just said a minute ago. Did you say putting up cows?
Bro, yes, we put up a lot of cows during the day. Well, I say patrol takes a lot of loose cow calls for sure.
Being a farm boy from Kansas, we had a few of those too. And let me tell you, cattle, like in Kansas, we have big beef plants there. Down in Texas, cattle are worth a lot of money. I mean, you want to put those cows up.
Yeah.
I was going to say, don't tell me you never put cows up in Kansas as a trooper. I know you
Actually,
did.
we had an accident one time. There was an accident with a truck tractor, semi trailer pulling some cattle, and a couple of the cattle they was hit. A couple of the cattle fell off. They were severely injured. They weren't going to make it. It's the only time I ever discharged my Mini 14 in the line of duty. I had to actually take out a couple of them on the side of the road because the vet said there's just no saving these guys. So,
Yeah.
but
Now that would suck.
but the way it is, and it's a little weird because you're now deliberate. It's not like in the heat of battle when you're doing something. It's like this is you're deliberately walking up to a living thing and putting a round through its head to put it out of its misery. It's just not
Yeah.
it's not, people think it's fun. No, it's not a fun thing to do, even
Not
if
at
it's
all.
cattle.
Not at all.
So,
No.
but anyway, back to you for a second, Randy. So what's your next toy that's on, what's on your Christmas list? What does Randy Tooman want for Christmas with the money seizures and the dope seizures?
So I actually just met with the X-ray people, Viking.
Mobile X-ray.
Yeah, they have a handheld X-ray machine. It's about $58,000, but it does some tremendous stuff.
I saw that used. Where it's like you kind of hold it two hands and you run it across that. It's got a scope there, a display where you can see things that are hidden.
Yeah, and so one of the ways that they've been trying to beat the X-ray is through lead. They line the compartments with lead, and I guess an experienced X-ray operator at the border can pick up the anomalies from the lead. But this machine has a lead detection built into the system, and the only thing that's lead on a vehicle is probably the wheel weights and the inside of the battery. So if you're detecting lead in odd places, then it's a big.
Well, and I got a clue
That's
for
called
you.
a clue.
Yeah, it's good. That's what I'm gonna say. I got a clue for you traffickers. When you've got lead lining the trunk of your car, I'm sorry, pal. That's just not normal for that shit to happen. So, hey, as we bring this to a close, do you see yourself doing anything else? I mean, at some point, do you have to graduate to something else, or is this what you do until they got to roll you out till you can't hop into your kennel anymore, and they've got to roll you out to retirement?
Man, I've thought about that, and I've got a lot of offers to do some pretty cool stuff. But I think I like what I do, man. I don't plan on going anywhere, and if it was up to me, man, I'll die doing interdiction. I mean, the only other aspect that maybe in the future for me would maybe be teaching other interdiction officers what I've learned. Through my experience as being an interdiction officer, and maybe just help share some information to make them better. But no, man,
It's bad juju. We don't say we don't want you to die being an interdiction officer. We want you to have a nice long life and die after, die a natural, you just pass away naturally, nicely, or in place like Murph. Sometimes I don't know if Murph has passed away when we're having an episode here. I got to remotely have
Sorry,
his
were you
wife come
talking to
in and
me?
check his pulse. So, but no,
Were you,
dude,
were
we
you
want
just
you to have
talking to me?
yeah, I'm talking to you. Are you talking to me? So no, we want you to have a nice long life. But final shout out before we go here. So just give a good commercial for Canines for Cops and Canines for Kids.
Yeah.
How important has this program been for law enforcement? And by the way, I did find out we have a few dogs here in Virginia, but when I went on the site, one of the dogs is in a little town of Kansas called Parsons, Kansas, and I happen to know some people out there in Parsons. So one of the dogs is in Parsons, Kansas. So how important has this program been for law enforcement in Texas?
Man, not only in Texas, throughout the whole country and the world. I mean, she's donated dogs over, not just in
To
the
France.
yeah,
Yeah.
just not in the United States, and it's tremendous because unfortunately, the dogs being so valuable to departments that it's a big expense for departments, especially a smaller department, to invest in something like this. And with Chrissy out there doing what she's doing, man, she's providing dogs that are saving lives every day for multiple communities. I mean, the Canines for Kids putting dogs in school, the Canines for Cops putting dogs on the street, protecting officers, protecting the community. I mean, it's tremendous. And without her efforts, I mean, there would be so many agencies without dogs.
Gonna correct me if I'm wrong here, Morgan, because I know you will. Which never happens, but
Which never
just in
happens that you're
case.
wrong, or never happens that I correct you.
Both.
Yeah.
But we're going to put the links on there for Canines for Cops and Canines for Kids, so our listeners can learn more. If you're looking to donate to a good
Yep.
cause, this is one of those.
And let me tell you how being on the executive board of a nonprofit before and being the treasurer and stuff, when you see the ratings that they have for transparency and donors and stuff, that's the stuff you got to look for in nonprofits. You look for who have they been audited by? Do they have transparent accounting? Do they have good use of the funds? And you can go fill out. You can go see the form 1099-K that all nonprofits have to file, and that's available for the Canines for Cops and stuff. So Christy, let me tell you, just from having been on that side of it, runs just an impeccable organization in terms of the ratings they have, the transparency they have, and we'll put the links on there. And for you, Randy, man, I can't tell you, I can tell you, I would want everybody's pay doing this type of work to be at a minimum twice of what it was, if not more, because
Yeah.
of the risks you take and what you do. And so there's very little we can do for you other than help you tell your story. And this is, people can't see this, but this is me saluting you, brother, saying, stay safe, wear your vest out there every time, make sure Colt wears his vest, and just keep Colt away from the female dogs unless you want baby dogs running around the house, right?
I think, Steve said it best, man. If you really truly do something you enjoy, you never work a day in your life. And that's exactly how I feel, man.
Well, it's been a true honor to have you on here, Randy, and I can't tell you what to do, but the advice I got for you is keep kicking their ass. You can put them in jail, and that hurts them, but when you take their shit, it makes them
Take their
cry.
money and take their dope, man.
You're doing a phenomenal job.
That was
brother.
my
It
impersonation of a
truly
cartel
is.
member going, "It's Randy again. He does our stuff. I don't like him." Hey,
So watch your six,
actually,
brother.
yeah.
Watch your six.
Final thing I want to ask: how, in terms of how things are now, have there been any legitimate or credible threats against you lately? Anything that you've seen that indicates that, hey, they're still out there looking for me?
No, I mean, that was the only credible. Of course, I get threats from people all the time, as all law enforcement officers do, but people are just usually angry. But that was the only credible, serious threat that I've seen come towards me in my career, and nothing lately, and nothing about that has re-stemmed as well.
All right. Well, just Gavin DeBecker. It's a book I recommend, especially for law enforcement. Gavin DeBecker did a lot of stuff for the Secret Service. He wrote a book called The Gift of Fear. It's listening to that inner voice, brother. Just listen to that inner voice, and you keep yourself safe, keep Colt safe. And anytime you need backup, anytime you're up in Virginia to do training, literally, Culpeper's an hour away from my house, man. Call me. Beers are on me. Just don't bring the dog. I don't want Murph. I don't want a picture of the dog latched onto my nards because Murph wants a picture. Let me reposition that for you. That's not going to
We
happen.
want a video of that. That would be, you know what? We probably have 7 million viewers if we had that.
All right. I ain't taking
Gotta
one
take
for
one
the
for the
team. Sorry,
team.
pal. Ain't taking one for the team, even with Kevlar on. So, hey, look, let us bring this to a close. We want to thank you. We want to thank Christy also for introducing us to you. And again, this is us saluting you. So, everybody else, you all stay tuned. for the debrief. We only made this a one-parter because it was very difficult to try and figure out where to split it in the middle and not ruin things. But I hopefully you guys stuck with us. But I'm telling you, thank God that there are people like him who love what they do and can't wait to get out there every day and take tools. I mean, weapons like Colt. More than a dog, it's his partner, obviously. But what a weapon against these folks. But the dog is only as good as their handler, right? So, Steve, I mean, Randy's got to have the instincts first. He's got to find the right cars to stop. He's got to develop the reasons. And then the dog helps him confirm what he probably thought and helps him find stuff you'll never find anywhere else. But, man, $100 million worth of fentanyl. I mean,
one hit. That's just one
hit.
Yeah.
How much stuff is getting through that you don't have access to or that you can't get to?
Right. And we got to give a shout out to his sheriff as well for supporting him and giving him the opportunity, not only the opportunity to go out and do a job he loves, but provide him with the tools to do a better job. And the fact that his sheriff, the funds that they're receiving through asset forfeiture from some of his seizures, he's allowing him to use some of those funds to buy more equipment. And so in one of his stories, he talked about when he was drilling a tank under a car and all of a sudden this liquid's coming down on him. So what we did afterwards is we had a little private conversation, and I've got a friend who's a retired DEA agent, Ernie Batista, we'll give Ernie a shout out here, who works for a company that he's actually a rep for several different companies that provide different items that law enforcement on the highway can use. And Randy was talking about trying to get one of the portable x-ray machines. Well, there's other equipment out there that will help him identify the drug so he doesn't have to put himself in a position of danger to have liquid meth or possibly fentanyl spill out onto his skin and ultimately kill him. So just, happy that we happen to know some people that can help these guys out and put them in contact like the next day. And turns out the boys in Houston are already using some of this equipment. So it's all good, man. This is all coming together.
Oh, it's great too. And, again, we give a shout out to Christy Schiller for the great work she's doing to get these dogs out there to take these people off the highways, off the road. And the fun thing too is just to listen to how, he was itching to get back to work. Even when we were doing this interview, Steve, he was itching to get back to work. He's like, yeah. It's almost like he's as bad as his dog. You got to handle him and the dog at the same time. But hey, man, Randy Tooman, bad dude. Again, you can't see this, but this is me saluting you. What a fantastic job. And we're honored that you came on and told us about that. And by the way, you guys saw how dangerous it was when the FBI visits you and says, hey, cartel's looking for you,
Unbelievable. It's not a comfortable feeling, let me tell you. I might have been there and experienced that. But big shout out to Christy again. If you want to know more about her, listen to episode 43 of Game and Crimes, where she talks to you about canines for cops and canines for kids. Check those out. Check out those websites and just see what she's doing. She's a real hero. She's an unsung hero.
Help them out.
Absolutely.
Pause for the cause. That's right. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, hey, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We enjoyed it. We really did enjoy it. Head on over to Apple and Spotify. Hit those 5 stars. Let us know what you think about it. Support the show, and we will continue to bring you great content, great people, great stories. By the way, towards the end of the month, Murph and I will be in San Diego at the Southern California Gang Conference. Conference. And maybe it's a Congress. We'll have a bunch of politicians there.
Oh, hell no.
No, they won't, because guess what? The difference between them and politicians is the guys at the gang conference keep their hands in their own pocket.
Oh, there you go.
Boom. Thank you very much. No, but we're going to be collecting some great stories down there, but also head on over to GameOfCrimesPodcast.com, our website, more information about the shows, the books, everything we got going on, the pictures, get a couple pictures there too. Follow us on the social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram, PayPal.com. Use our email, GameOfCrimesPodcast@gmail.com or PayPal.me/Game of Crimes, whatever it makes it easier for you. But I'll tell you, got to go to Patreon, Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. That's where you got to be, because we put great stuff out there. You can't make this shit up. 911, what's your emergency? We will have the upcoming gentlemen of the Cali cartel being taken down by the gentlemen of the real DEA narcos.
Oh,
Chris and Dave.
You got to come and listen to that. I mean, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, you need to join just to listen to them. It's more in depth than Javier and I did on the Medellin cartel. So I'm loving every second of it. I've learned so much from these guys. I had no idea they were doing a lot of stuff up there.
Yeah, trust me. Episode 12, the end of episode 12, when you find out how they extricated themselves from the
Don't say anything. Don't say anything.
It is an eye opener. Anyway, guys, hey, we hope you enjoyed this. But again, join us on Patreon. But hey, we want to thank you guys again.
Yes.
Like I said, the week before, Jerry Clark, that was the second most downloaded episode in Game of Crimes history. So we thank you guys very much for supporting the show, supporting us. And once again, we thank you for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.